Chapter 2193. The Xittagarbo Wonderland was the territory of the Hidden Land realm. Therefore, when they saw the black-robed monks rushing towards Lin Sun, Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others were all watching the fun. When they first met Lin Sun's arrogant behavior made them very uncomfortable. They wanted to see just how capable this arrogant fellow was. Then, they saw the scene of the monks kneeling on the ground. Lin Sun stood still and did not make a move. This strange scene caused the pupils of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others to constrict. The strongest of those monks is only at the Saint King realm. There is no emperor to be. It's normal that they were suppressed by that guy's words. If it were me, I could do the same. Fei Lang said in a low voice. In their group, the weakest was at the third heaven of the quasi-emperor realm. Fei Lang and Lan Ling were even at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Although they were somewhat surprised by Lin Sun's words of law power, they were not surprised. The white-haired old man looked on indifferently and did not make any comment. The old monk at the emperor realm next to him frowned and said to the skinny middle-aged monk, Zheng Xiu, go and capture that heretic. The skinny middle-aged monk called Zheng Chu nodded, and then his figure swiftly vanished on the spot. The black-robed monks knelt on the ground, blood dripping from their 7 orifices. They were like a group of trapped insects, unable to move or resist. The scene caused the sacrificers kneeling on the dojo to be startled, who immediately glanced in the direction with astounded expressions. No one could believe that there was someone in the world who dared to make trouble in the territory of the Hidden Land realm. For a moment, Lin Sun, who was alone in the field, suddenly became the focus of attention. At this moment, the skinny middle-aged monk Zheng Xiu appeared out of thin air. Without any nonsense, he rushed towards Lin Sun with the black Buddha staff in his hand. Boom! The Buddha's staff swept through the air, rolling up endless black Buddha's light and condensing into a solemn shadow of the Buddha. Their power was immeasurable, and they rushed towards Lin Sun together. Lin Sun flicked his fingers. Clang! Amidst a deafening explosion, the black staff shattered inch by inch, and the Buddha phantoms that condensed from it dispersed like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. Zheng Chu, the successor of the Hidden Land realm, who was a third-tier quasi-emperor, spurted blood from his mouth and nose. He staggered and fell heavily to the ground. His face was pale, and his aura was in disorder. For a moment, he was unable to stand up. You're asking for humiliation. Lin Sun sneered. With his current cultivation base, he could easily suppress a first-grade martial emperor like the chaotic sky sword emperor. How could he possibly take a third-grade quasi-emperor seriously? The surroundings were deathly silent. When they witnessed this scene, no matter if it was those sacrificial participants or the distant Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others, all of them were shocked while their expressions changed indeterminately. With a flick of his finger, he shattered the staff and heavily injured Zheng Chu. Looking at Lin Sun's calm attitude, it formed a sharp contrast and was particularly shocking. You've all seen it. This lad is not someone an ordinary quasi-emperor Jew can compare to. It was also at this time that the white-haired elder spoke, his eyes flashing like lightning. If it were you, would you be able to do the same? Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others looked at each other. If they had gone all out, they might have been able to do it, but Lin Sun's flick of his finger was too casual. It was obvious that he had not used his full strength at all. This made them want to refute, but they could not find a good reason. They were speechless for a moment. You already knew that this person was very strong. The old monk's face was a little gloomy. Lin Sun's strength surprised him, but what made him uncomfortable was that the white-haired elder and the others obviously knew that Lin Sun was very strong, but they did not warn him. Instead, they looked like they were watching the show. The old monk couldn't help but wonder if the white-haired old man and the others were here to watch Lin Sun or the Hidden Land realm. You've misunderstood me. I only saw that he was unusual, but I don't know how strong he is. The white-haired old man explained, and then he smiled and said, Of course, if fellow Taoist needs my help, then I will naturally not stand idly by. There's no need. If we cannot suppress a small heretic in the territory of the Hidden Land realm, wouldn't we be a laughing stock? The old monk's expression was indifferent. His eyes flashed with a frightening light as he locked onto Lin Sun in the distance. At the same time, Lin Sun also looked over. His dark eyes were deep and calm. Don't worry. In the future, the Hidden Land Realm will not only be a laughing stock, but it will also be removed from this world. His words stunned the white-haired elder and the others. How arrogant! This was the territory of the Hidden Land Realm. Everyone knew that the Hidden Land Realm was one of the three dark forces. Even on the starry sky ancient path, it was a terrifying existence that many major forces would be afraid of. Who would dare to threaten to remove the Hidden Land Realm? Those who overestimate themselves should pay for their crimes with death. The old monk's eyes flashed with a terrible, murderous intent. He waved his sleeves. Boom! Heaven and earth turned upside down. A domain of the Great Path condensed and turned into a dark world, covering Lin Sun and the place where he stood. Everyone, please watch how I refine this boy. The old monk's expression was indifferent. With a single thought, the domain world produced unparalleled power. Thunder surged, the wind and clouds changed, and the Emperor's path filled the world, evolving all kinds of killing power of the Great Path. As soon as they saw this, a thought came to the minds of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others. This guy was finished. The Emperor Realm was like a natural moat that could not be crossed. It was as supreme as a deity, wielding the power to shake the heavens. As soon as the old monk made his move, there was no doubt about the outcome. But at the same time, boom, an earth-shattering roar rang out. Everyone felt their hearts tremble. They saw the domain world controlled by the old monk burst like a bubble. A tall figure swept out from the rain of light. His bearing was out of this world, like an immortal descending to the world. His style was extraordinary. This, Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others gasped in shock. That was the power of the Emperor Realm. How could it be shaken by a quasi-emperor? This was unbelievable. At this moment, the white-haired old man was also shocked. His originally indifferent expression finally changed to one of shock. As an existence of the Emperor Realm, he was more aware of the strength of the Emperor Realm. Just like the attack of the old monk, it seemed ordinary, but the power of the Emperor Realm was enough to suppress all enemies under the Emperor Realm. But now, Lin Sun, a peerless quasi-emperor, was able to defeat this attack. This made the white-haired old man somewhat incredulous. His understanding was about to be overturned. This boy must have a powerful trump card in his hands to be able to turn the situation around. The white-haired old man deduced. He did not believe that there was anyone in this world who could surpass the natural moat of the Emperor Realm. Such a thing had never happened since ancient times. Therefore, he subconsciously thought that Lin Sun had borrowed some power that did not belong to him. The old monk was also startled. His mind was shaken. After a long while, he said with a gloomy expression, "What a heretic! No wonder you dare to come and cause trouble. So you have something to rely on. But in my eyes, no matter how you struggle, you are still an ant." Before his voice died away, he had already attacked again. Buzz! A seal condensed from black Buddhist light appeared out of thin air. The seal was like a blooming lotus, the petals of which were entwined with the obscure power of the Law of Emperor. As the seal was slapped out, the entire Ksitigarbha temple shook. Countless Tao markings and formations appeared to resist and dissolve this fluctuation. Otherwise, everything in the temple would be wiped out in the blink of an eye. Boom! The seal was dazzling, whistling through the air. It had the power to blot out the sun. Its power was unfathomable, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Lin Sun did not retreat, but advanced. Or rather, at the moment the old monk attacked, he had already made his move. His figure moved through the air. He stretched out his right arm and punched out. Heaven-shaking punch. However, this punch was completely different from before. The fist force was like a cauldron that shone in the sky, like a great abyss that swallowed the sky, and it surged with peerless laws of the Great Way. It revealed a great spirit that shook the heavens and the earth. Boom! An earth-shattering collision sounded. The fist force and the seal collided. It was like two volcanoes that had been silent for thousands of years had erupted at this moment, releasing an unparalleled torrent of power that swept out. Suddenly, the Tao markings and formations that covered the Ksitigarbha temple could not hold on any longer and were directly crushed into pieces. The huge Taoist field, the towering Buddhist shrines, were all annihilated. Those sacrificers and the white-haired old man's group had long since seen that the situation was bad and fled. When they saw the Ksitigarbha temple being wiped from the ground, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and tremble. Boom! The power released by this blow even spread to the entire Yinhua city, causing the entire city and the buildings in the city to tremble and shake violently. Many cultivators scattered throughout the city could not help but be horrified. Their hair stood on end, and they fled in panic like a herd of frightened beasts. My God, someone dares to wantonly destroy the territory of the Hidden Land realm. Run. This power. I'm afraid it's a figure in the Emperor realm. Run out of the city. This city is doomed to fall. Panicked and noisy shouts resounded in different areas of the city. For the cultivators who had been in the dark world all year round, they were all too familiar with this kind of turmoil and chaos. Almost at the first moment, with their rich survival experience, they all fled out of the city. The white-haired old man and his people were no exception. The battle between Lin Sun and the old monk was like a destructive storm. In the blink of an eye, the entire Yinhua city was in ruins. Countless buildings collapsed, the earth cracked, and the sky and earth were filled with smoke and dust. It was as if an unprecedented earthquake had taken place. Many people fled out of the city, and when they saw this scene, they all broke out in a cold sweat, feeling like they had just survived a disaster. There were also many who did not manage to escape and lost their lives in the city. Looking at this scene from afar, the expressions of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others changed. Boundless coldness surged in their hearts. The guy, how could he be so powerful? The white-haired old man's eyes flickered with divine light. At this moment, he could not remain calm. A city was destroyed in an instant. Heretic, do you dare to come up and fight? Suddenly, a cold and majestic roar resounded through the sky, shaking the clouds in all directions. Chapter 2194. Buddhist Emperor Du Ping. People recognized at a glance that the old monk was a famous Emperor realm figure in the Hidden Land realm. He had been guarding the Yunhua domain, and his power was as great as the sky. It really is a battle between emperors. Countless people were shocked. Even Buddhist Emperor Du Ping had made a move. How powerful was his opponent? In this extremely somber and oppressive atmosphere, Lin Sun's tall figure stepped into the air like a divine rainbow, illuminating the sky and also reflected in people's vision. A quasi-emperor? How is it possible? Someone cried out involuntarily. Since when does a quasi-emperor dare to challenge an emperor realm figure? Countless people were dumbfounded. This was too unexpected. Old thing, I'll take your head now. Lin Sun let out a long roar. His figure was bright and dazzling as he charged into the sky. Hearing his words, people were stunned again. They didn't dare to believe their ears. That was Buddhist Emperor Du Ping. How could a quasi-emperor defeat him? However, what happened next caused everyone who was paying attention to the battle to be dumbfounded, and their minds went blank. This battle broke out. Buddhist Emperor Du Ping attacked, but he couldn't kill the young man with the cultivation of a peak quasi-emperor at the first moment. This completely subverted people's understanding. It was as if they were witnessing an unprecedented miracle. Under the sky, the divine light was vast and mighty, and the light of the way was rumbling. Lin Sun and Buddhist Emperor Du Ping fought fiercely. The two figures intertwined, and in a flash, they had exchanged hundreds of blows. Heaven and earth were in turmoil, and the sun and moon were dim. Dying. Buddhist Emperor Du Ping held a demon-subduing pestle in his hand, and he killed like a god. His whole body was steaming with the Black Emperor law, and it evolved into a green lamp, a pagoda, a Buddhist scripture, a futon, a wooden fish, a bronze bell, and so on. From afar, he was like the legendary Bodhisattva, solemn and majestic, and his power shook the 9 heavens. Rumble. Under his killing, the void was chaotic like a tide, and the sound of Taoism spread like thunder, boundlessly domineering. This was the Emperor realm. Every move he made had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. In the face of this terrifying killing, Lin Sun's performance was not inferior. His body was shining, and his body reflected the image of the abyss. He performed the furnace method, and he had the power to push the 9 heavens. He didn't give an inch, and he looked disdainfully like a demon. Kill! Lin Sun's black hair flew in the air, and his eyes were as cold as lightning. The chaotic Void Sword Emperor who was suppressed in the Great Tao, without In Pagoda, was no longer a match for him. Therefore, when he faced the Buddhist Emperor who was also at the first level of the Emperor realm, he was incomparably confident and had the aura of invincibility. In a flash, Buddha the Archduke Ping's expression changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Ever since he stepped into the Emperor realm, he didn't take anyone below the Emperor realm seriously. Killing them was as easy as harvesting grass. But now, a quasi-emperor Zhuhua had disregarded the natural chasm of the martial Emperor realm, crossed a major realm, and was evenly matched with him. In the countless years since the ancient times until now, such an incident that seemed to break the rules and overturn everyone's knowledge had never occurred. What made Buddha Emperor Du Ping most incredulous was that the quasi-emperor law that Lin Sun had mastered was almost perfect and flawless. It was no different from the real emperor law. This also allowed him to unleash power that far surpassed what a peak quasi-emperor could unleash in battle, appearing extremely heaven-defying. How could this man be so strong? Who was he? Buddha Emperor Du Ping became more and more frightened as the battle went on. He had already used the real power of the Emperor realm and did not hold back at all. But until now, he had not gained the upper hand. This was even somewhat unacceptable to him. A dignified Emperor realm was evenly matched with a quasi-emperor Zhuhua. If this was spread out, it would only prove that he was very weak and would become the laughingstock of the world. Kill! Buddha the Archduke Ping no longer hesitated as he used his trump card ability. His figure suddenly became extremely imposing and tall. He held the demon's subduing pestle in one hand and the golden pagoda in the other. The power of the 2 emperor weapons covered the sky and earth, causing the world to tremble, all things to turn into powder, and the earth to collapse into a huge ravine. Old thing, you can't do it. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun's abyss-like black eyes were burning with a fierce fighting spirit. Without hesitation, he used the lawless blade. Swish! The snow-white blade tore the sky and traversed the void. The dazzling blade, Qi, was thousands of feet long. It directly ignored the secret technique that Buddha Emperor Du Ping activated and slashed at him. In an instant, Buddha Emperor Du Ping let out a muffled groan. A horrifying blade wound was torn in front of his body. His skin and flesh were torn open, and blood was dripping. You are... When he saw the lawless blade, Buddha Emperor Du Ping immediately recognized Lin Sun's identity. Because after the end of the game of chess, everyone knew that the lawless blade, which originally belonged to the far ancient imperial clan Shang clan, was obtained by Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fongsuan. But before he could finish speaking, Lin Sun had already attacked. The blade Qi was like waves, layer upon layer, covering everything. It was so dazzling that the heaven and earth dimmed, and it was so sharp that even the sun and moon trembled. Buddha the Archduke Ping blocked and dodged repeatedly, but he was beaten to a point where he seemed to be inferior in comparison. He was battered and exhausted, and he fell into a situation where he could only passively take a beating. Not long after, he was injured again and again. It was not that he was incompetent, but the lawless blade was too overbearing and ignored all the techniques in the world. If he did not use the demon's subduing pestle and the golden pagoda to block, he would have been cut into thousands of pieces by the boundless blade Qi. Open! Buddha Emperor Du Ping was bathed in blood, and his eyes were about to pop out. He let out a roar and began to fight with all his might. His entire body seemed to be burning, and the power belonging to the first level of the Emperor realm was activated to the extreme, causing the heaven and earth to fall into great terror. In this regard, Lin Sun was not afraid. Instead, the more he fought, the more courageous he became. His chi and blood were surging, and his fighting spirit was burning. He performed his Tao and techniques to the extreme. This was the second Emperor Realm figure he had fought since he started cultivating. Without borrowing the power of Yi, Wu Kei, and the Broken Blade Spirit, he suppressed the opponent with his own Tao. Rumble, the battle became more and more intense. Looking from afar, the heaven and earth were covered by the aura of destruction, and the two figures could not be seen anymore. In reality, powerhouses below the Emperor Realm could not watch a battle of this level, and they did not dare to watch with their divine sense. Otherwise, they would be affected. But even so, people were still shocked. What did they see? A peak quasi-emperor was engaged in a heaven-defying slaughter battle with an Emperor Realm expert. Just this alone was enough to make the heavens tremble and startle the ages. Poof! In the battlefield, Buddha Emperor Du Ping, who was fighting desperately, was defeated again and suffered heavy injuries. His right arm was chopped off by the saber, and the terrifying saber chi swept across his body, almost splitting him in half. At this moment, the anger, doubt, and disbelief in Buddha Emperor Du Ping's heart were all replaced by an indescribable fear. To be able to cross a great realm and surpass the natural chasm of the Emperor Realm to fight with an Emperor Realm was already a magnificent feat that had never been seen before, and it could be called a miracle. But now, not only did Lin Sun achieve this, but he also completely suppressed an Emperor Realm figure in a head-on confrontation, making him suffer heavy setbacks again and again. If this was spread out, who would dare to believe it? Even the Emperor Realm figures in the heavens would be horrified. Fellow Taoist, let me help you. Suddenly, an indifferent voice resounded, and the white-haired elder appeared out of thin air. His beard and hair were fluttering, and his body was surging with the aura of the Emperor Realm. Fellow Taoist, be careful. This person is heaven-defying and cannot be judged by common sense. If I am not wrong, he is Buddha Emperor Du Ping heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but warn. But before he could finish, he was interrupted. Understand. A Taoist sword had already appeared in the white-haired elder's palm, and his aura rushed to the 9 heavens and 10 earths, fierce and murderous. He attacked without hesitation. Buddha Emperor Du Ping was anxious. What do you understand? That guy is Lin Sun, the evil survivor of Mount Fengsuan who once killed great Emperor Baki. But just when he was about to warn again, there was a sudden change in the field. Around Lin Sun, 5 figures suddenly appeared, and each of them was exactly the same as Lin Sun. Although the charm and aura they exuded were different, their aura was as strong as Lin Sun's. 5 doppelgangers. This was also the first time Lin Sun used them in a battle. Greenwood Taoist body controlled the Tower of Ceaseless. Red Fire Taoist body controlled the Boundless Flag. Yellow Earth Taoist body controlled the Lifeless Seal. Blackwater Taoist body controlled the Infinite Bottle. Platinum Taoist body controlled the Broken Blade. In an instant, the aura around them resonated with Lin Sun's body, and the power produced was so strong that it directly covered the whole world. Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the white-haired elder's eyeballs almost fell out, and they felt a chill in their hearts. One was already so heaven-defying, and now there were 5 more. How could they fight? Old guy, I have no grievances with you, but you came to die. How stupid are you? A soft sigh sounded from the lips of Lin Sun and the 5 doppelgangers at the same time. Then, they moved together. Boom! Greenwood Taoist body was covered with green light, and he took out the Tower of Endless. Red Fire Taoist body was flowing with divine fire, and he waved the Wufang flag. Yellow Taoist body was as tall as a mountain, and he activated the Lifeless Seal. Black Water Taoist body. All of a sudden, the world there seemed to be broken. All the Emperor weapons of Kunlun cooperated with Lin Sun's doppelgangers, and they rushed out like a tide. That scene was enough to make people desperate. In an instant, the figures of Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the white-haired elder were submerged, and they fell into endless danger. Then, shrill screams and angry and panicked roars rang out. "No, little bastard, do you know who I am?" The sound shook the world and spread far away. But soon, even the sound stopped abruptly, and only the horrible light of Tao and treasure was flowing in that world. The figures of the two emperors, like duckweed involved in the violent turbulence, were torn to pieces and turned into endless blood rain. Boom! The world trembled, and the world was filled with the breath of destruction, as if it was about to be blown up. The onlookers had already fled far away. They could see nothing, and they could not feel anything. Only the fear and horror in their hearts were getting stronger and stronger. Everyone had the same thought in their minds. The two emperors, it can't be that he's in trouble, right? When the smoke and dust dispersed, the turbulent and violent torrent of battle receded between heaven and earth. Chapter 2195. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the shattered world was like a crumbled painting. It was a ghastly sight. When everyone's vision cleared up, they finally saw that Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the white-haired elder had long disappeared from the sky. There was only a tall figure that was like a perfectly straight spear that stood in the air. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his elegant demeanor was matchless. Countless people were shocked out of their wits, and their minds went blank. Dead. Two martial emperors had died in the hands of a quasi-emperor, Zhu Ying. This was simply earth-shattering. For cultivators below the martial emperor realm, the martial emperor realm was like a natural chasm that no one had ever been able to surpass. But today, such an unprecedented miracle had happened. Many people couldn't help but recall that a few months ago, in the distant domain of Cold Sky, Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fonsuan who had transformed into the Sword Demon Abyss, had defeated 10 region lords in one fell swoop and suppressed Great Emperor Baki. At that time, this incident had caused a sensation in the entire Dark World, shocking countless people. But today, 2 martial emperors had also fallen, defeated by quasi-emperor Zhu. For countless years, the Dark World had been turbulent and bloody, but things like the fall of martial emperors had rarely happened. The reason was that the martial emperor realm was like the sky, enough to suppress a region, as if they were supreme and unshakable. But now, in less than half a year, martial emperors had fallen one after another. How could people not be shocked? The most incredible thing was that the person who had killed the martial emperors was not a martial emperor, but a quasi-emperor Zhu. That guy can't be Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fonsuan, right? Suddenly, someone asked in a trembling voice. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples, causing a sensation. It must be him. In the entire starry ancient path, only Lin Sun can kill a martial emperor before becoming a martial emperor. So, it's him. This guy is wanted by the entire world, but he doesn't seem to be afraid. Now, he's even fighting in the territory of the Hidden Land realm. He's too bold. If you had the power to kill a martial emperor like him, you could also be so fearless. Countless voices of discussion rang out, mixed with shock, realization, shock, awe, and emotion. The countenances of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others were ghastly pale while their bodies went cold, and they seemed as if they'd lost their souls. Now they finally realized why the white-haired old man stopped them from making trouble for Lin Sun and let him go when they met for the first time. The unwillingness in their hearts had long since vanished and was replaced by deep fear. So, it's this remnant. After a long time, Fei Lang said bitterly. They came from the Panwu Taoist court of the primordial world. So how could they not know Lin Sun? Back in the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone, countless Panwu Dao court's core successors had been killed by Lin Sun. Even Mi Wuya had been defeated. However, no one had expected that in less than a year, this remnant of Mount Fonsuan, who was being hunted by the entire world, had grown to such a heaven-defying level. Senior Uncle Su Wuheng is dead. What should we do? Lan Ling could not help but ask. Su Wuheng was the white-haired old man, an emperor of the Panwu Dao court. His death was incomparably unfortunate. This was originally a battle that didn't have much to do with him, but because of his interference, he lost his life. It was as if he was delivering his own head. Let's go to the Million-Star City. Fei Lang gritted his teeth and made a decision. The wonderful Lotus Feast would be held in the Million-Star City, which was also in the Cloudflower domain. It was not too far from the destroyed Cloudflower City. It could be foreseen that when the news of Lin Sun's appearance in the Cloudflower City spread, it would definitely attract the attention of many magnates. Moreover, the Cloudflower domain was originally the territory of the Hidden Land Realm. Now that Lin Sun had appeared here and killed the Buddha Emperor Du Ping, how could the Hidden Land Realm let it go when they heard the news? The world was silent. Lin Sun, who was standing in the void, did not feel any joy or excitement at the moment. Long ago, he could easily defeat the Sword Emperor of Chaos without using the Emperor weapon and the 5 doppelgangers, let alone now. Defeating the Buddha Emperor Du Ping and Su Wuheng was within his control. The only thing that made Lin Sun sigh was that the Emperor realm was really not easy to kill. Just like before, he had used all kinds of methods to destroy the bodies of the Buddha Emperor Du Ping and the Buddha Emperor Du Ping, and even shredded their souls. However, the 2 Emperor Realm cultivators were not completely dead. Their remaining bloodstains and broken primordial spirits all revealed the supreme will of the Emperor Realm. It was not that easy to completely erase them. This was the Emperor Realm. Perhaps it was possible to defeat them, but to kill them was very difficult. The reason why Yi, Wu Kei, and the Spirit of the Broken Blade could completely kill the Emperor Realm was because they had the absolute power to crush them. However, Lin Sun was different. The power that he possessed was ultimately not the true power of the Emperor Realm. Previously, if he had not seen the opportunity in time and collected their remnant blood and soul with the Great Way Endless Tower, they would definitely have had the hope of recovering in the future. In an extremely distant place, there was an uproar of discussion. This made Lin Sun stop his thoughts and immediately realized that his identity had been exposed. His identity had been exposed. However, he did not panic. After leaving this place, he could change his appearance again. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lin Sun's figure flashed and disappeared in the vast world. On this day, the successor of the Mountain of Mind and Heart, Lin Sun, appeared in the Cloudflower domain. The news of him killing the Buddha Emperor Du Ping and Su Wuheng spread like a hurricane throughout the dark world, causing a great sensation. Thousand Star City. Recently, the Thousand Star City was like a sacred place in the dark world. It was orderly, and the atmosphere was lively and peaceful. Because of the Wonder Lotus Grand Meet, even the villains, madmen, and ferocious people scattered in the city have been driven away. Inside and outside the city, the successors of the 2 great forces, the Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect, were everywhere. They acted as guards and welcomed the cultivators from other worlds in the starry sky. Martial Uncle, the teams sent by the 6 Great Tau Courts, and the 10 Great War Clans have all been arranged to stay in the city. In addition, some of the teams sent by the far ancient imperial clans have also been arranged. It is foreseeable that when the Wonder Lotus Grand Meet begins, it will definitely be an unprecedented grand event. It will be enough to make the Hidden Land Realm famous in the heavens. In Xidagarba Temple in the city, an old monk who was as thin as a withered tree sat in the lotus position. In front of him, a black-robed monk bowed and reported the recent situation. His expression was filled with respect and awe. The old monk, who was as thin as a withered tree, was a supreme elder of the Hidden Land Realm. His Taoist name was Du Ming, and he was in existence in the 9th level of the Emperor Realm. Du Ming opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "The people from Copper Sparrow Tower haven't shown up yet?" The black-robed monk shook his head. "I haven't seen any movement from Copper Sparrow Tower until now." "That's good. In my opinion, when Shi Tiandi returns from the ultimate, the 3 dark giants will probably become the 2 dark giants." Du Ming's expression was indifferent, and his sunken eyes were filled with coldness. During the Wonder Lotus Grand Meet, all the great forces of the starry sky had come one after another. It could be said to be an unprecedented grand event. It was to discuss some secret matters related to nirvana of freedom. The Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect had joined forces to act as the host. Only Copper Sparrow Tower had not made a move, and it seemed that they had no intention of participating. Moreover, Du Ming had already learned that the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect had sent Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor to hunt down Lin Sun. The heir of Mount Fongsun had been obstructed by the Heavenly Destruction Sky Martial Emperor of Copper Sparrow Tower. The tinny Buddhist emperor sent by the Hidden Land Realm had been chased by the big yellow dog of Copper Sparrow Tower, and he had been forced to flee all over the world. This made Du Ming suspect that Copper Sparrow Tower was doing this to protect the heir of Mount Fongsun and resist the decree from Shi Tiandi. If they dare to resist Shi Tiandi, Copper Sparrow Tower will definitely collapse and be removed from the world. The black-robed monk showed a hint of anticipation. Du Ming grunted and was about to say something when a series of hurried footsteps sounded. Then, a middle-aged monk walked over and said with a solemn expression, "Martial Uncle, the heir of Mount Fongsun, Lin Sun, has appeared in Cloud City," he told him the news he had just received. When he learned that Buddha Emperor Du Ping had been killed, Du Ming's eyes flashed with a frightening cold light. What a rampant heretic! How dare he come to the Hidden Land Realm and behave atrociously? His voice was full of undisguised killing intent. The middle-aged monk said worriedly, "Martial Uncle, this boy has the means of the slayer. If he comes to the wonderful Lotus Festival to make trouble," Du Ming frowned and said, "Now that the forces of all the major forces in the heavens have gathered here, unless this boy is tired of living, he will not dare to appear in the Million-Star City." After thinking for a while, he issued an order, "Mobilize all the forces and go all out to hunt down this boy." The middle-aged monk's expression changed. "Martial Uncle, ordinary people are no match for this boy at all. Even people like Great Emperor Baki have been in trouble." He was reminding that the current Lin Sun was not someone who could be easily hunted down. Du Ming said expressionlessly, "Don't worry, as long as I can find the trace of this boy, I will go and kill him." So that was it. The middle-aged monk secretly breathed a sigh of relief and immediately left to carry out the order. At the same time, the experts of all the major forces in the heavens gathered in the Million-Star City also heard about the news of Lin Sun killing Buddha Emperor Du Ping. For a time, it caused a lot of sensation. Forces like Qinquan, Panwu, Untainted Land, Demons, and Mysterious Yellow were all in a complicated mood. They were shocked and resentful. They hated Lin Sun to the bone. Some of Lin Sun's old rivals, such as Mi Weia, Ling Hongzhuang, and Hua Xingli, also came to the Million-Star City this time. When they heard the news, they all fell silent. It had been less than a year since the end of the forbidden ancient immortal realm. The guy who was once invincible in the peerless Saint King realm now had the power of the Slayer Emperor. In contrast, these geniuses who were of the same generation as Lin Sun in the past seemed even more unbearable. They could not help but feel that they were far behind him. They knew very well that the current Lin Sun was no longer the same as them. He was far inferior to them. Chapter 2196. The Hidden Land Realm acted very quickly. In just one day, the descendants of the Hidden Land Realm in every city in the vast territory of the Yunhua domain had taken action. Their goal was to arrest Lin Sun, the descendant of Minuscule Mountain. For a moment, the storm was brewing, attracting the attention of countless people. It should be known that the wonderful Lotus Feast would begin in 10 days. Many ancient orthodoxies from all over the starry sky had gathered in the Yunhua domain. For example, the 6 major Tao courts, the 10 war clans, the far ancient imperial clans. At such a critical juncture, Lin Sun, the descendant of Minuscule Mountain, had also appeared in the Yunhua domain. This naturally made people wonder, did this young man come to participate in the wonderful Lotus Feast? What did he want to do? But everyone was sure that Lin Sun's appearance could not be a good thing. A young man who was wanted by all the heavens and could be said to be the enemy of the whole world. Wherever he went, there would definitely be bloodshed. The Hidden Land Realm's actions were vigorous, and the entire Yunhua domain was enveloped in a somber atmosphere. Everyone was paying attention. Unfortunately, everyone guessed wrong. The reason why Lin Sun appeared in the Yinhua domain was really that he was just passing by. Moreover, he was not interested in the wonderful lotus feast at all. He was not arrogant enough to ignore a group of mighty cultivators in the Emperor realm. In the following time, as Lin Sun walked in the Yinhua domain, he also learned that the Hidden Land realm had mobilized forces to search for him. Right now, the thing that could easily expose his identity was the bronze sword box on his back. This treasure could not be put away, so he could only carry it on his back, which was extremely eye-catching. But Lin Sun was not afraid of anything. No matter how powerful the Hidden Land realm was, the number of strong cultivators in the Emperor realm was bound to be limited. It was impossible for a large group of them to appear randomly. This also meant that even if his identity was exposed, ordinary enemies would not be able to stop him at all. Buzz. On this day, Lin Sun came to a deserted mountain range. He raised his hand, and a black lotus throne appeared. This black lotus platform gathered the power of the great Tao like a river. It was originally given to the white-haired old man, Su Wuheng, by the Buddha Emperor of Salvation. Now, it had become Lin Sun's trophy. Gazing at it carefully for a moment, Lin suddenly remembered something recorded in the tranquility scripture of the Great Treasury. The supreme inheritance of the Hidden Land realm was the Earth Scripture. It was a supreme Taoist scripture created by the Ksitigarbha Emperor, the founder of the sect. It was rumored that at the beginning of the primordial era, after Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva created this Tao scripture, he left the starry ancient path and headed to the other side of the starry sky in search of a higher Tao. However, according to the Tranquility Sutra, the Ksitigarbha Emperor did not leave. Instead, he chose to rest in a forbidden place in the Hidden Land realm. This silence was like a form of self-sealing. It was said that it was for the sake of cultivating a supreme secret technique that allowed one to break through the Emperor realm. On the other hand, if he wanted to awaken the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva from his slumber for countless years, then he needed to use the wish energy of the Grand Tao as the source to carry out a sacrifice. In the past, Lin Sun just took it as a secret and didn't take it seriously. But now, after seeing what happened in the Ksitigarbha Temple in the Cloud City, Lin Sun suddenly realized that the Hidden Land realm had been collecting the wish energy of the Grand Tao with a secret technique all these years. The cultivators who protected their territories were like a steady stream of sacrifices. When they knelt down and worshipped, their power of the great paths was silently extracted from them. Eventually, it all fell into the hands of the Hidden Land realm. For example, the Black Lotus throne in Lin Sun's hand was a strange treasure called the Lotus Throne of Will. It was a treasure that accumulated and sealed the wish energy of the Grand Tao. After a brief identification, Lin Sun found that there were at least tens of thousands of kinds of wish energy of the Grand Tao stored in the Lotus Throne of Will, each of which belonged to different practitioners. Think about it. The territory controlled by the Hidden Land realm covered an unknown number of cities, and every single city would carry out a sacrifice every 7 days. In this way, how shocking would the willpower of the Great Path gathered be? If it's really to wake up the sleeping Ksitigarbha Emperor, then the plot of the Hidden Land realm is too terrible. Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. The Ksitigarbha Emperor was a supreme figure at the beginning of primitive times. The cultivation he possessed was absolutely unimaginably horrible. If such an existence, which could be called the Dark Supreme Lord, were to wake up after being silent for thousands of years, it would definitely be a thing that could shake the world. At that time, the whole dark world would be dominated by the Hidden Land realm. Until now, there has been no movement from the Hidden Land realm. It seems that if they really want to use the wish energy of the Grand Tao to wake up the sleeping Ksitigarbha Emperor, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Lin Sun looked at the Black Lotus throne in his hand and fell into thought. The wish energy of the Grand Tao was an incomparably wonderful power. It was as elusive as fate and as illusory as time. Now that Lin Sun had all kinds of supreme scriptures, he naturally knew that the wish energy of the Grand Tao also played an irreplaceable key role in the cultivation of the Emperor realm. For example, The Buddha Emperor Du Ping gave this lotus throne of will to the white-haired old man, Su Wuing. He must also know that the wish energy of the Grand Tao in the lotus throne of will could play a magical role in the cultivation of the Emperor realm. It was a pity that Lin Sun had not yet set foot in the Emperor realm. Although he knew some magical effects of the wish energy of the Grand Tao, he didn't know the specific effects. But Lin Sun was sure that the Hidden Land realm must have a big plan to collect the wish energy of the Grand Tao so crazily. Do you really think that I'm easy to bully? Before leaving Yinhua Domain, I'll play with you. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep and cold. A long time ago, he had been assassinated by the Hidden Land realm. After arriving in the Dark World, the Hidden Land realm was like a loyal dog of Shi Tiandi and launched a wanted order for him. Even now, because of his appearance in Yinhua Domain, the Hidden Land realm had set off a vigorous hunt to kill him. In the past, Lin Sun would have left this troublesome place as soon as possible. But now, he was fearless since a long time ago. So how could he possibly leave just like he had in the past? Green Cliff City. There was a large city in Yinhua Domain. The Xitigarbha temple in the city was grand and majestic, solemn and sacred. Outside the city gate, a group of descendants of the Hidden Land realm acted as guards. They carried out a strict inspection on every strong man who entered and left the city before they were allowed to go in and out. The tall city tower was covered with wanted news and portraits related to Lin Sun, as if they were afraid that people didn't know that Lin Sun was the most wanted man in the starry sky. It was a pity that no matter how strict the inspection was, it couldn't stop people like Lin Sun from entering. In fact, when Lin Sun entered Green Cliff City, he didn't attract any attention from beginning to end. Soon, he came to the Xitigarbha temple. A familiar scene was playing in the temple. A group of strong men who were sheltered in the city were kneeling on the huge Taoist field and worshiping devoutly. In the censer in front of them, the burning incense was silently extracting the wish energy of the Grand Tao from each of them, but they didn't notice it at all. Do they really want to wake you up from your slumber? Lin Sun looked at the huge Buddhist shrine standing in the Taoist field. In the Buddhist shrine, there was a divine beast of 9 odd beasts, overlooking all living beings like a god sitting in the darkness. Who are you? How dare you look directly at the statue of the ancestor of our sect so rudely? A monk in black came over and scolded Lin Sun. Are you collecting the wish energy of the Grand Tao to wake it up? Lin Sun pointed at the 9 odd beasts in the Buddhist shrine in the distance. The monk in black was stunned. His face suddenly changed, and he said angrily, "How dare you? Come on, take this man down." Clatter, a group of monks in black rushed out. Lin Sun stood still, but countless bright sword chi whizzed out of his body like crisscrossing divine light, spreading out. Puff, puff, puff. Before the monks in black rushed to him, their heads were cut off by the sword chi. For a moment, the void was full of heads flying, and blood splashed out like countless springs. Who on earth are you? How dare you come to our Hidden Land realm to make trouble? The monk in black who had scolded Lin Sun before shouted. His face was livid, and his eyes were about to pop out. Aren't you looking for me? Lin Sun looked indifferent. The monk in black suddenly understood as if he was struck by lightning. But the next moment, his head was also cut off, and he died violently on the spot. When Lin Sun walked out of the Xitigarbha temple, all the descendants of Xitigarbha died violently. The lotus throne of will, used to collect the wish energy of the Grand Tao, was taken away by Lin Sun. When Lin Sun left Green Cliff City, the strictly controlled city fell into great panic and chaos. He came as if he was in an uninhabited place, and left after he was done. The news spread out as soon as possible. But when a group of big shots from the local Hidden Land arrived at Green Cliff City, Lin Sun had long disappeared. They were so angry that they felt stuffy in their chests. They had nowhere to vent their anger and were about to vomit blood. No one had expected that Lin Sun would dare to be so bold when he was being hunted down. He was completely unscrupulous and unscrupulous. And in the following period of time, Lin Sun's figure appeared in different cities one after another. Wherever he appeared, the Xitigarbha temple would be destroyed and the lotus throne of will would be taken away. From the beginning to the end, no one could stop him, no one could stop him, and he swept through everything in his path. The news could not be hidden at all. Lin Sun's unstoppable killing was like a single spark setting the prairie ablaze. It caused the entire cloud-flower domain to be in turmoil and caused a monstrous storm. Countless uproars, exclamations, and shocked voices rang out. The entire dark world was alarmed, and no one dared to believe it. When the news reached the million-star city, all the major forces from the starry sky gasped and were shocked. This was indeed incredible. Lin Sun was already the enemy of the whole world and was wanted by the whole world, but he seemed not to be afraid at all. With his own strength, he set off a bloody storm that affected many cities in the Hidden Land realm. When the old monk Du Zhao learned all this, he was so angry that he almost went berserk. Chapter 2197. This man deserves to be cut into pieces. Monk Du Zhao was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He was in the 9th level of the Emperor realm and had a strong mind. But now he felt so annoyed that he wanted to cough up blood. There were only 2 days left before the Magic Lotus Festival began. But now, not only did they fail to capture Lin Sun, the heir of Mount Fangsuan, but he alone set off a storm of blood and chaos in the Yunhua domain. This was a slap in the face to the Hidden Land realm. Cultivators from all forces gathered in the city of 10,000 stars. What would they think of the Hidden Land realm when they learned of this? Uncle Master, the headmaster, and a group of higher-ups have been dispatched. Someone came to report. Monk Du Zhao was stunned, and his expression was uncertain. Our sect has to dispatch so many important people just to capture and kill a little thing. How shameful. He let out a long sigh. In fact, it was just as old monk Du Zhao had predicted. When they found out about the great commotion Lin Sun had caused, the 6 great Dao courts, the 10 great battle clans, and the other primordial imperial clans could not help but gloat. The Hidden Land realm was known as one of the 3 dark giants. It was so powerful that all the worlds on the starry sky ancient path were afraid of it. But now, in the territory of the Hidden Land realm, they could not even do anything to an heir of Mount Fangsuan. Naturally, it was too shameful. A series of facts have proved that even if Lin Sun is the enemy of the whole world, the destructive power he controls alone is enough to give any ancient orthodoxy a headache. Someone sighed. This man is growing too fast. It has only been less than a year since the end of the trip to the forbidden ancient immortal realm, and he already has the power to overturn the heavens and kill emperors. How terrifying is that? Someone sighed. If this man doesn't die, he will become a great threat. Don't worry. On this starry sky ancient path, as long as Emperor Shur is here, Lin Sun is destined to not be able to jump around for too long. Alas, what worries me is that if this man proves his way and becomes an emperor, at that time, who in the whole world can do anything to him? While the dark world was shocked by Lin Sun's magnificent feat, the headmaster of the Hidden Land realm and a group of high-level figures came together and arrived at the Yunhua domain. The lineup was so powerful that it was as if the core power of the Hidden Land realm had been fully mobilized. Unfortunately, when they set out, Lin Sun had already left the Yunhua domain. This made everyone in the Hidden Land realm feel depressed. Lin Sun had stirred up a storm and caused them to be disgraced. Then, he disappeared without a trace. This was naturally maddening. No matter what, amidst this turbulent, chaotic, and clamorous atmosphere, the curtains to the Wonder Lotus Grand Meeting that the entire world paid attention to was drawn as scheduled. It was said that the highest elder of the Hidden Land realm, Monk Demang, who presided over the event, had a gloomy look on his face. From beginning to end, he did not smile at all. It was said that most of the ancient forces from different parts of the world were discussing how to capture Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart and Mind. But in the end, they couldn't come up with a clear and effective solution. The reason was very simple. Lin Sun, who had the power of the Slayer, was no longer a pushover. Ordinary emperors couldn't deal with him at all. The most troublesome thing was that his whereabouts were erratic. He was good at hiding and disguising himself. Even if they chased after him, they couldn't find too many clues. It was said that in the Wonder Lotus Grand Meeting, The great forces from all over the world had a secret talk and finally speculated some secrets related to the immortal Supreme Road. All this had nothing to do with Lin's son. After making a scene in the Yunhua domain, he left directly and rushed to the Dark Land along the established route, according to the map in the guiding copper mirror. Half a month later, on the border of the Western Horizontal Territory, there was a surging blood-red ocean called the Indefinite Blood Sea. Lin Sun stood on the top of a lonely mountain on the side of the sea. Looking at the boundless blood-red sea, he couldn't help frowning. The map hidden in the guiding copper mirror ended here. However, it was clear that this was not the hidden land. The Dark Land is called the primordial ancestral land of the Mist-Hidden House. Since ancient times, no one knows where it is hidden without a guide. Lin Sun was lost in thought. The Western Horizontal Territory was one of the 33 territories of the Dark World, controlled by the Bronze Sparrow Tower, one of the 3 Dark Giants. The indefinite sea of blood before them was called a place of death by the locals, since the ancient times until now. So long as it was an expert that entered this sea, then practically all of them would be unable to return, and they would die without a doubt. According to rumor, there were extremely terrifying primeval ferocious souls lying dormant in the depths of the indefinite sea of blood. Supposedly, they were monsters formed from the resentment of fallen Emperor realm figures. And after experiencing countless years of transformation, all of these primeval ferocious souls had become terrifying to the extreme. Of course, this was just a rumor, but it could also be seen that the indefinite blood sea must be a place of great danger. At this time, the only thing Lin Sun was uncertain about was whether the Dark Land of the Mist-Hidden House was hidden in the indefinite blood sea. The sea was turbulent, with layers of blood-red waves. The sky was dyed like blood, which looked strange and creepy. The piercingly cold sea breeze blew over, and it was mixed with strands of fiendish chi. Lin Sun suddenly noticed that there was a boat on the sea, braving the wind and waves. On the boat stood a man with disheveled hair, with a flagon hanging on his waist. His eyes were blurred, his nose was red, and he was holding a wooden sword in his arms. He stood there lazily, squinting his eyes as if he was asleep. Lin Sun's pupil shrank. The man, who looked like a drunkard, came on a boat on the sea. He didn't seem to be intimidating at all, but he gave Lin Sun a deadly sense of danger. Just looking at him, Lin Sun got goosebumps all over his body and felt a chill in his heart. There was no doubt that this must be a horrible existence. But before Lin Sun could react, a big yellow dog suddenly rushed out from the side of the man. It stood on its legs, held its head high, and looked at Lin Sun with a pair of bell-like eyes with incomparable pride. Ow! The big yellow dog didn't bark like a dog, but more like a wolf howl. Lin Sun was stunned. It was just a dog, but he felt that it was so proud, conceited, and insufferably arrogant, with a posture of, I'm the only dog in the world. Boy, what are you doing? Come here quickly. The big yellow dog made a sound, with impatience written on its face. Lin Sun looked at the man who looked like a drunkard, but he saw that the man held a wine gourd and gulped it down. After a loud belch, he said with a smile, "Is it strange?" Lin Sun nodded. This scene was indeed too strange and abnormal. On the dangerous and unpredictable blood sea, a man and a dog appeared on a boat. It was hard not to find it strange. The drunkard said, "You come here to go to the hidden land, right?" Lin Sun was shocked and said, "You are from Mist-Hidden House." "Kind of." The drunkard hung the wine gourd on his waist again, raised his hand to wipe the wine stains on his lips, and said, "Come on, we have been waiting for you for a long time." Lin Sun frowned and hesitated. Whoosh! Suddenly, the big yellow dog appeared in front of him and said with a faint look in his eyes, "Boy, do you know that I almost killed my way into the hidden land realm for you? Of course, you are still too young to understand this, and you don't need to understand it. As long as you understand it, you can come here safely all the way. It stretched out a dog paw, pointed to itself, and said word by word, "You have made great contributions." There was incomparable conceit in its voice, which was a posture of looking down on Lin Sun. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched. This dog was too arrogant. Whether it was its actions, words, or even its breath, it could be described as insufferably arrogant and domineering, which made people want to kill it and eat it. Let's go. Before Lin Sun could respond, the big yellow dog stretched out its paw, grabbed Lin Sun, and rushed to the boat. Lin Sun was in a cold sweat. He had no time to react or resist a dog's sneak attack. For a moment, he looked at the big yellow dog in a different way. The drunkard laughed. Boy, in the dark world, all the emperors have a secret understanding. Do you know what it is? As he spoke, he didn't move, but the boat under his feet swept toward the depths of the unstable blood sea, as fast as lightning. Lin Sun had calmed down a little at this moment. He had noticed that although the man and the dog were unfathomably powerful, they seemed to have no malice towards him. What? Lin Sun asked casually. The drunkard smiled and said, I'd rather offend the king of hell than offend Big Yellow. Big Yellow? Lin Sun looked at the dog squatting on the bow of the boat with its head held up proudly. He was suspicious. Could this dog really make the emperors of the dark world so afraid of it? I hate your suspicious eyes the most in my life. The big yellow dog turned his head and glared at Lin Sun. If you're not, forget it. I don't want to argue with a little boy like you. If it were other emperors, I would have killed them many times for such suspicious eyes. Lin Sun's lips twitched. He had never seen such an arrogant big yellow dog. No, it was so arrogant that it didn't even put emperors in its eyes. Lin Sun decided to ignore this annoying big yellow dog. He looked at the drunkard beside him and asked with his fists cupped, May I ask who you are, senior? I don't dare to call you senior. The drunkard waved his hand. You can call me, well, drunkard. Drunkard? Lin Sun became more and more suspicious. Such a man, who made him feel extremely dangerous at first sight and couldn't see through him, was not as simple as a drunkard. What about it? Lin Sun couldn't help looking at the big yellow dog. Such an insufferably arrogant dog shouldn't have a very old-fashioned name. The big yellow dog raised its head high and was about to speak, but the drunkard said first, Big Yellow. Chapter 2198. Big Yellow howled and bared his sharp white teeth. He rushed up and bit the drunkard's thigh. The drunkard gasped but didn't dare to move. He bared his teeth and said to Lin Sun, Now you know how powerful Big Yellow is? He was in so much pain that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Even Lin Sun felt his heart ache. Big Yellow was obviously a different kind of dog. He was very arrogant and very cruel. A boat carrying 2 people and a dog quickly disappeared into the depths of the indefinite blood sea. By the sea, the Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence and Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence appeared out of thin air. Looking at the depths of the sea, their expressions turned gloomy. That son of a B***TCH is simply too much. Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence gritted his teeth, his heart full of anger. He had been chased by Big Yellow for a period of time. His body was full of bite wounds. He only managed to get rid of Big Yellow when he fled to the hidden land realm. Bronze Sparrow Tower took the remnants of Fongsun Mountain away. Do you think the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower is really planning to go against Shurtiendi? Asked the Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence. Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence said coldly, Go against? I really can't see how the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower has the confidence to go against Shurtiendi. If he's really crazy enough to do this, Bronze Sparrow Tower will be removed from the 3 dark forces. The Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence was silent for a moment. Let's not talk about this. I heard that the primordial ancestral ground of Fog Hidden House is in the depths of the indefinite blood sea. Why did the polearm of divine destruction and that dog bring this kid there? Very few people knew that the Misty House was the core power of the Bronze Sparrow Tower. Its power was spread all over the starry ancient path. I only know that back in the ancient times, the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower proved his way in the primordial ancestral ground of Fog Hidden House and set foot on the Emperor's Road. Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence said in a low voice. The Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence frowned. You suspect that the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower wants to give this kid a chance to prove his way and become emperor. Who knows? The world only knows that the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower is the proudest person since ancient times. But in my opinion, his shrewdness is also unparalleled. Buddha Emperor Tiandu said, "Over the countless years, no one knows where he came from, and no one knows how he managed to spread the power of the hidden mist house to every world in the ancient path heavens. Furthermore, no one knows what he's plotting, but now I vaguely understand." Speaking of this, Buddha Emperor of Tiandu's eyes flashed with a strange light. Do you still remember that Lin Sun, who seemed to be an insignificant chess piece, played a vital role in the process of the Dozhan Emperor defeating the nameless Supreme Emperor in the All-Heaven game? Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor seemed to have understood and said in astonishment, "You're saying that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master also wants to use this child as a chess piece and imitate Dozhan Emperor's actions to compete with Heavenly Emperor Shurtian?" If this was true, just thinking about it made one's heart tremble. Buddha Monartian Du took a deep breath and said, "Whether it is true or not, we will be able to find out when Heavenly Monarch Shur returns from the ruins of returning. Shur Tiandi is not the previous nameless sovereign. If Copper Sparrow Tower Master really dares to do this, he will definitely be digging his own grave," Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor said resolutely. The two chatted for a while and then turned to leave. The uncertain Blood Sea was the core of the Hidden Mist House. It was not a place they dared to break into without permission. On the same day, Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor and Buddha Emperor of Tiandu released the news to the outside world together that Lin Sun, the future leader of Mountain of Mind and Heart, who was wanted by the whole world, had obtained the protection of Bronze Sparrow Tower, one of the three dark giants. All of a sudden, the dark world was stirred. This news was simply earth-shattering and pushed Bronze Sparrow Tower to the teeth of the storm. Is Bronze Sparrow Tower crazy? Aren't they afraid of being regarded as an enemy by the whole world? Everyone felt incredulous. Mountain of Mind and Heart was wanted by Heavenly Emperor Shurtian himself, but Bronze Sparrow Tower dared to protect Lin Sun. This was clearly against Heavenly Emperor Shurtian. Some time ago, when Heavenly Emperor Shurtian came to the Dark World, only Bronze Sparrow Tower Master refused to pay a visit. He had already offended Heavenly Emperor Shurtian. Now Bronze Sparrow Tower, under his command, still dares to protect Lin Sun. This indeed shows that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master really intends to break off relations with Heavenly Emperor Shurtian. Why on earth does Bronze Sparrow Tower Master do this? How could a person like him do such a stupid thing? There must be some secrets hidden in this. Countless people were discussing and speculating. They were all shocked. Bronze Sparrow Tower was one of the three giants of the Dark World. It had a huge influence and a strong foundation. Different from the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land Realm, Bronze Sparrow Tower always adhered to the word justice when doing things, and it had an extremely high reputation in the hearts of the people. No one had expected that Bronze Sparrow Tower would protect Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain of Mind and Heart, at this critical juncture. Such an action was no different from courting death. At the wondrous Lotus Gathering that was being held, all the ancient orthodoxies and forces from all over the world were also shocked by this news, and they were discussing it incessantly. If the heavens want him dead, he will be driven mad. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master is too arrogant. If he wants to use Lin Sun as a chess piece and imitate the actions of the Dozhan Emperor, then he is gravely mistaken. Just wait, Bronze Sparrow Tower is not far from destruction. The great figures of those ancient forces all made similar inferences. No one thought that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master had any foundation that could go against Heavenly Emperor Shurtian. And when Heavenly Emperor Shurtian returned, it was destined to be the day of Bronze Sparrow Tower's destruction. It's impossible for Heavenly Emperor Shurtian to escape from the ultimate before the third calamity of oblivion arrives. In that secret realm, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master's eyes were filled with indifference. He had long since understood the reactions of the outside world, but he did not care at all. Everyone said that he had gone mad, and those great forces said that he was courting death, but only he himself knew what he was doing. "Why are you so sure?" She, who sat opposite him, said in a cold voice. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master's bearing was casual, and his voice was also very casual. He said indifferently, "Because I grew up in the ultimate, and I know better than Heavenly Emperor Shurtion what will happen once someone like him enters." At this point, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master seemed to have thought of something and said, "A long time ago, there was a fellow from the other side of the starry sky who entered the ultimate. That person called himself Luo Tongtian, and whether it was his foundation or his spirit, they could be said to be boundlessly terrifying. He did not know that when he talked about Luo Tongtian, a layer of waves arose in Shi's heart. Luo Tongtian, of course, it was the master of the heaven-accessing mystic realm, one of the ancestors of Lin Sun's mother, Luo Qingxuan. She did not expect to hear the second successor of Mount Fengxuan mention this name at this time. At that time, I had just entered the sect, and I was still a youth. But Luo Tongtian was already a supreme figure that even my master regarded him with respect. At that time, he should have already broken through the boundaries of the progenitor realm and stepped onto an even more supreme path of cultivation. At this point, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master stared at Shi and said, "But do you know what he encountered after entering the ultimate?" She said indifferently, "Do you think I'll be very curious?" Bronze Sparrow Tower Master smiled slightly, appearing extremely conceited. "Why don't you guess?" A strange look suffused Shi's eyes. "What if I guess correctly?" Bronze Sparrow Tower Master laughed again and said, "If I guess correctly, I'll answer the question you want to know the most." She said without hesitation. He was scared off by the master of Mount Fengxuan. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master. He fell silent with a blank expression. He, who was originally extremely conceited, revealed a rare look of disbelief. This appearance made Shi feel an indescribable sense of comfort. The man in front of him was arrogant to the bone, to the point where he considered everyone beneath him. But now, he had finally suffered a setback. This feeling was truly delightful. "I understand. You already knew about this long ago." After a while, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master sighed emotionally. She said directly, "Now, it's time for you to answer me. Lin Sun is your junior brother. What exactly do you want to do?" The master of Copper Sparrow Pavilion didn't seem to be surprised, and he thought for a moment before he said, "Mount Inner Heart has been destroyed. No matter if it's my eldest senior brother or the other junior brothers and sisters, perhaps they'll be able to hold their own, but the path they seek towards the Tao was deduced by my master a long time ago when they joined the sect. It's the same for me, Zhongxiao. However, junior brother is different. There are 50 great Taos and 49 heavenly evolutions. His path of Tao is different from us successors of Mount Fengxuan from the very beginning. It's also full of variables. In the very beginning of the primordial era, Master once deduced the source of order of the heavenly Tao. He paid a heavy price and had no choice but to leave in the end. Before leaving, Master left behind a Taoism. You know this Taoism. It's related to the eternal sovereign path. Over the countless years, I've presided over the world of darkness for the sake of waiting for the lone lotus that Master spoke of. Upon hearing this, she could not help but ask, "You're saying that Lin Sun is this lotus?" Bronze Sparrow Tower Master shook his head. "It's hard to say. The eternal sovereign path has yet to appear, so I can't be certain. Don't forget that my master also paid a huge price to deduce this. However, in the end, he only left behind a Taoism." After a pause, he said seriously, "However, I'll give it a try and take a look." There was a trace of determination in his eyes. "What if it's proven that he isn't?" she asked. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master fell silent for a long time before saying, "We'll talk about it when the time comes." She did not ask any more questions. She could already tell that the proud and conceited second successor of Mount Inner Heart had a knot in his heart over the countless years. It was that lone lotus that would bloom on the path of an undying paragon. She did not speak, but Bronze Sparrow Tower Master took the initiative to say, "Don't you want to know why Heavenly Emperor sure rushed to this sinkhole?" She casually said, "If you want to say it, you will naturally say it. If you don't want to say it, given your pride and arrogance, who can force you to say it?" "Then I won't say it," Bronze Sparrow Tower Master said without hesitation. She was stunned, clearly caught off guard. He frowned and said, "Is there any meaning in playing this kind of child's play? I just want to see if there will be a time when you can't guess it," Bronze Sparrow Tower Master said solemnly. Copper Sparrow Tower Master spoke solemnly, but as he spoke, he couldn't help but laugh. Only then did she understand that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master was taking revenge on him for making him suffer a setback. Childish. 2 words came out her mouth. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master laughed even more happily. He laughed so hard that he rocked back and forth, completely losing his bearing. It had been a very, very long time since he had laughed so loudly. Chapter 2199. After a while, the Copper Sparrow Tower Master finally stopped smiling and said, "In these years, I have rarely joked with others. There are not many people in this world who are worth me joking with." There was pride in his voice, but there was also a trace of disappointment. It was lonely at the top, and there were only a few people who could speak with him. She only looked at him coldly and did not say anything. In the end, Copper Sparrow Tower Master decided to take a step back and said, "The answer is very simple. I had my subordinates spread the news and told Celestial Emperor Shur that Luo Tontion had gone to the ruins of End. Then, he immediately rushed over." She was stunned. "Why?" Tower Master Bronze Sparrow said casually, just like the previous venerable sovereign, Shur Tiendi came from the other side of the starry sky. He came to the ancient path of the starry sky to regain control of the forbidden power of order and to search for a treasure called the heaven-accessing secret realm. And this heaven-accessing secret land is related to Luo Tontion. She's eyes narrowed imperceptibly as she said, "How did you know?" The Copper Sparrow Tower Master said, "In ancient times, there was a fellow who was known as the Uncrowned Emperor. He used the lifeless killing formation, which was ranked 9th in the heavens, to stir up a storm of blood in the Tao battles of the emperors. He was also the only person who had never stepped into the martial emperor realm and was able to kill a martial emperor as a quasi-emperor. People called him the Deer Formation Emperor, but no one knew that array Emperor Deer also came from the other side of the galaxy." When the Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master said that, he revealed a meaningful expression as if he was waiting for she to take the initiative to ask him. However, she looked indifferent and answered without asking, "His name is Lu Boya. Of course, he knows best about the heaven-accessing place and Luo Tontion. Strictly speaking, he raised your junior brother Lin's son." Pavilion Master Bronze Sparrow, the silent atmosphere was slightly awkward. After a while, Copper Sparrow Tower Master shook his head and said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about this. It's too boring." "Boring?" She's lips curled up into an undetectable smile. "It should be very disappointing." Pavilion Master Bronze Sparrow, however, she said leisurely, "There's no need to feel embarrassed. I just happen to know some things." Copper Sparrow Tower Master suddenly felt that this conversation really couldn't continue. Indefinite blood sea. The waves of the blood-colored sea rose and fell, seemingly boundless. After traveling for an unknown period of time, Big Yellow, which was crouching at the bow, let out a howl that sounded like a wolf. Howl! Wind and thunder raged on the surface of the blood-colored sea, forming a huge blood-colored whirlpool. The drunkard steered the skiff and instantly charged into it. When Lin's field of vision became clear, he noticed that he'd already arrived in a secret realm. The heavens and the earth were vast, and auspicious clouds curled up in the air. Moreover, numerous mountains that were suffused with divine radiance and auspicious rays stood towering on the ground. On the peak of the mountain, there were rows of ancient buildings. "Sir Lin, we finally meet again." A voice that was pleasing to the ear with a unique magnetism resounded, and it was misty like smoke. A rain of light appeared in the sky, and it formed the outline of a graceful figure. A blood-red umbrella, a green dress, and black hair that fluttered in the wind. Her entire body emanated a bewitching and breathtaking charm. It was Qingying. When Lin Sun first arrived at the Hongmeng world, he had met her in an underground world controlled by the Misty Hidden House. Later, Qingying gave the bronze mirror to Lin Sun and told him that if he could meet him in a secret place in the future, he would tell him a thing that would bring him no harm. At that time, Lin Sun didn't take it seriously and just thought it was normal. But now, all the way to the secret place, Lin Sun found that Qing Ying's identity was not simple, and the misty hidden house behind her was even more mysterious. Lin Sun turned his head, only to find that the drunkard and the big yellow dog who came with him had already disappeared without a trace. "Don't worry, Sir Lin. Please come with me." Qing Ying's voice was soft. She held the blood umbrella and turned to walk forward. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind. Even if they were very close, people couldn't see her face clearly. But her every move gave people a soul-stirring, bewitching aura. Lin Sun thought about it and followed her. This secret realm was extremely spacious and quiet. Lin Sun didn't see anyone along the way. It seemed that there were only him and Qing Ying leading the way in the world. When they came to a palace on the mountainside and invited Lin Sun to take a seat, Qing Ying put away the blood umbrella, which was as red as rouge in her hand. She was dressed in a cyan dress. Her skin was white and dazzling like mutton fat jade. Her soft black hair was loose, revealing a beautiful oval face. Her eyelashes were fine, and her eyes were big and deep like a clear spring. Her facial features were delicate and beautiful, and her whole body exuded a kind of extreme, bewitching beauty. She was like a peerless demon who could bring disaster to a country and people, so beautiful that it made people's heart tremble. This was the first time that Lin Sun saw Qing Ying's real face. He couldn't help being stunned by her beauty, which was particularly unique. "Do you know that Qing Ying has been waiting for you for a long time?" Qing Ying stretched out her white and slender hand and poured a cup of tea for Lin Sun with the cyan jade pot. Then she said softly, "Fortunately, you're not late." The tea fragrance was faint and misty, revealing a refreshing taste. The woman in front of him was as stunning as a painting, and her voice was as sweet as the sounds of nature. In the hall, there were only two of them. The atmosphere was so quiet, which made people unconsciously relaxed. "What are you waiting for?" Lin Sun asked, "To clear up your doubts." Qing Ying's lips curled up into a smile. His pair of clear eyes shined with intelligence. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling and said seriously, "I do have many doubts in my heart." Qing Ying stared at Lin Sun and said, "Before we talk about business, let me introduce myself. My name is Qing Ying, the young master of Hidden Mist House. I grew up here since I was a child. Over the years, I have only done one thing, that is to collect and understand all the news about you." Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. "Me?" "Yes." Qing Ying nodded and said, "I also know a little about the things you want to know." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Then I really have to ask for your advice. From arriving at the unstable blood sea to meeting the drunkard and the big yellow dog, there were too many doubts in his heart." "Where's this place?" he asked directly. Qing Ying was not surprised and said softly, "The misty hidden house's origin ancestral land is also called the Land of Darkness. The misty hidden house is the core power of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. Very few people in this world know that the misty hidden house's power has already spread across the entire ancient path of the starry sky." Lin Sun was suddenly enlightened, but he couldn't help being shocked. Who could believe that Bronze Sparrow Tower, one of the three dark giants, had already spread its tentacles all over the starry sky? Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "What about you? Why do you collect and pay attention to my news?" Qing Ying's eyes were full of brilliance. "You should have some guesses in your heart, right? Entrusted by someone?" "Yes." "Who?" "Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower." "Him." Lin Sun was shocked, and his black eyes were full of brilliance. "Could he be?" Qing Ying nodded again. "Young master's guess is correct. The one who entrusted me with this is the second successor of Mount Heart, named Zhong Xiu, who is also young master's senior brother." Lin Sun couldn't help sighing. "So that's how it is. I finally understand." Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower was regarded as the proudest person in all the heavens. Not long ago, he had refused to pay a visit to Shi Tiandi, which caused a sensation in the dark world. At that time, Lin Sun admired him greatly and thought that Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower was unparalleled in courage. But now that he thought about it, this was a matter of course. How could the second successor of Mount Hart bow to Shi Tiandi? Moreover, when he came to the unstable blood sea this time, the drunkard and the big yellow dog he saw both had unimaginably terrifying combat power. It was impossible for a Qing Ying to order these two people to play the role of guide, and only Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower could order this man and dog to do things. Lin Sun thought of third sister Ruosu's words and sighed with emotion. Third sister was right. When he arrived in the dark world, there was no need to look for second brother at all. Why? Because he was head of Bronze Sparrow Tower, and his forces had already spread all over the heavens. After a while, Lin Sun asked, "Why didn't you tell me this when we first met?" Back then, young master arrived in the primordial world with the identity of Yu Xian, and the order I received was only to hand over the bronze mirror to young master. I didn't dare to make decisions on other matters. Qing Ying said, "Later, I learned that when young master went to the primordial world, you already had an important task to complete some tasks assigned by the seniors of Mount Hart, such as participating in the Tao Discussion Conference, entering the forbidden area of ancient immortals, and fighting for the Chaos Treasure. At such a time, Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower naturally wouldn't interfere." Lin Sun only then understood. Back then, senior brother Li Xianwei, senior brother Pu Zhen, and senior brother Jun Huan had all protected him all the way, so that he could arrive at the primordial world smoothly. In fact, this was already equivalent to a plan. In order to be able to seize the Chaos Treasure in that game of chess, and help eldest brother defeat the nameless Supreme Emperor, Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower was his second senior brother, so it was impossible for him not to know these things. Perhaps because of this, Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower only asked Qing Ying to give Lin Sun a bronze mirror and didn't talk about other things so as not to destroy Li Xuanwei's plan. After figuring this out, another doubt came to Lin Sun's mind, and he asked, "So, I can see second senior brother now?" Qing Ying shook his head. "It's not the right time. In other words, young master hasn't been recognized yet." "Recognized?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Qing Ying said, "Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower once asked me to pass a message to you. 1 year later, when the Nirvana heaven appears, he wants to see your performance." Lin Sun was quite surprised and said in a daze, "Is it because I haven't been recognized by him that he doesn't want to meet me?" Compared with other senior brothers and sisters of Mount Hart, his second senior brother was really arrogant. "It's not that I don't want to, but the time is not right." Chapter 2200. Then, Qing Ying told Lin one thing. A few months ago, after Lin killed Emperor Baki, the Divine Sunshine Sect sent Tian Song Sword Emperor, and the Hidden Land Realm sent Tiandu Buddha Lord to kill Lin. Both of them were horrible existences in the three masters of assassination. Each of them was more powerful than Emperor Baki, and they were good at assassination. But on the way, both of them were stopped. It was Martial Emperor Divine Destruction and Big Yellow who were under the command of the Copper Sparrow Tower. Knowing this, Lin Sun felt a chill down his spine. Only then did he realize that his second senior brother had already helped him resolve a killing disaster in the dark. It was also at this time that Lin Sun knew the identity of the drunkard and the big yellow dog who had received him on the unstable blood sea. He also understood his second senior brother's intentions. It was not that he didn't want to see them, but he just wanted to see how capable he was. And the nirvana-free heaven that would appear in a year was a test. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun asked, "You once said that if I came to meet you, you should tell me something that would bring me no harm. What is it?" Qing Ying smiled and said, "Young master's second senior brother, Senior Zhong Xiu, proved his Tao and became an emperor in this hidden place, embarking on the ultimate emperor's path. Now that young master is a peak third heaven quasi-emperor. You must be making preparations to prove your Tao and become an emperor. This good news is related to this." Even though Lin Sun was mentally prepared, he was still shocked by these words. It had something to do with proving his Tao and becoming an emperor. This was a good thing that he had never thought of. "Is this also arranged by my second senior brother?" Lin Sun asked. Qing Ying nodded and said, "It does have something to do with Senior Zhong Xiu, but it also has something to do with someone you didn't expect." Lin Sun was stunned. "Please enlighten me." Formation Emperor Lu. Qing Ying gently spat out these 3 words, his starry eyes full of respect. Lin Sun's hand, which had just picked up the teacup, suddenly froze and asked, "Who are you talking about?" Qing Ying said seriously, "Formation Emperor Lu, that is, Master Lu who raised you." Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil, and his eyes flickered. How could the secret place of the Misty House be related to Master Lu, a good thing related to Taoism and becoming an emperor? At this moment, he couldn't help but be stunned. Over the years, Lin Sun was sure that Master Lu, who had been hunted by the Star Destroyer, was not dead. But he had no idea where Master Lu had gone. Not a single clue was left behind. The Qing Ying's magnetic and unique voice sounded. Array Emperor Lu, also known as the Crownless Emperor by all the experts in the world. Very few people know that Array Emperor Lu has another identity, the Hidden Mist House Master. If it weren't for him, the Hidden Fog House wouldn't have been able to spread its power across the entire Starry Sky ancient path. Even Senior Zhongxiu thinks that if it weren't for the limitation of cultivation, Array Emperor Lu's achievements in the Great Tao wouldn't be any lower than his. After all, in the Tao War of Emperors in ancient times, Array Emperor Lu was able to set up the lifeless killing formation, which was ranked 9th in the world. He killed 5 emperors and seriously injured 8 emperors, which made the whole Starry Sky tremble. It's conceivable that if Array Emperor Lu really became an emperor, how powerful he would be. In the end, Qing Ying's voice couldn't help but have a trace of leisurely fascination, without concealing his inner reverence and admiration. Lin Sun listened in a daze. What came to his mind was the grumpy and surly old man in the mine prison when he was a child, Master Lu, who was extremely demanding on his cultivation of spiritual tattoos. It turned out that he was not only the teacher of Zhao Yuanji of Xiao Empire, but also the founder of Green Deer School and the inheritance of 9 changes of Robbing Dragon in the commune of spiritual tattooists. He was also the uncrowned emperor, whose name once shook the Starry Sky, the master of the Dark World's Hidden Mist House. Lin Sun asked, "What about you? What's your relationship with Master Lu?" "Me?" Qing Ying thought for a while, and then said, "Since I was sensible, I helped him take care of various affairs of the Hidden Mist House. I once wanted to worship him as my teacher, but he never agreed. However, he didn't interfere with me reading some classics related to spiritual tattoos written by him." There was a trace of sadness in her starry eyes. "In my heart, I have always regarded him as my father or my teacher, but it seems that he has always regarded me as a maid." Lin Sun was silent. For this kind of thing, he couldn't say anything. Later, after the Tao War of Emperors in ancient times, he disappeared. Senior Zhongxiu once went to look for him, but he didn't find him. It was only in recent years that I learned that he went to a place called Xiao Empire. Speaking of this, Qing Ying looked at Lin Sun. "Child, you should understand now that after the Tao War of Emperors, Array Emperor Lu went to the place where you came from when you were young." Lin Sun couldn't help sighing. How could he not understand? These are the classics written by Array Emperor Lu, all related to spiritual tattoos. They have been kept by me all these years, and now it's time to return them to their original owners. Qing Ying took out a piece of jade made of animal bones and handed it to Lin Sun. It records the lifeless killing formation ranked 9th in all heavens, and also the incomplete formation deduced by Array Emperor Lu, called Falling Tao and Dying Heaven. Although it's only an incomplete formation that hasn't been completely perfected, its power is far above that of the lifeless killing formation. Lin Sun held the jade slip in his hand and sensed it with his spiritual awareness. Lines of dense Taoist patterns and textual annotations were reflected in his mind. Whether it was the tracks of those Taoist patterns or the handwriting, they all brought a long-lost sense of familiarity to Lin Sun. He didn't need to judge it all to know that it was written by Master Lu. "Thank you very much." Lin Sun took a deep breath, put away the jade slip, and thanked him. Qing Ying smiled and said, "Don't mention it. My duty is to work for Array Emperor Lu." The two chatted while drinking tea. Lin Sun soon learned that she had been rescued by second senior brother Zhongxiu and was now recuperating in a safe place. Star Yin was lucky to survive, but her whereabouts were unknown. According to Qing Ying, the forces of Bronze Sparrow Tower were searching for her everywhere, and as long as they found her, they would kill her at once. However, Qing Ying also said that second senior brother Zhong Qiu suspected that this woman had left to seek help from Shi Tiandi with the help of the Forbidden Order. In any case, after knowing that she was fine, Lin Sun finally felt relieved, and he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. At the same time, Lin Sun also learned some secrets related to the third tribulation of oblivion. When the tribulation came, Nirvana heaven would appear. It was a world related to the immortal road of supreme venerable. It was derived from the original order of the starry sky ancient path. This also meant that the forbidden order controlled by Shi Tiandi couldn't interfere. Different from other secret realms, Nirvana heaven was very likely to have the law of samsara of time. The test faced by the strong who entered it would also become extremely dangerous. Once one entered samsara, there were only two outcomes. One was to sink into it and lose oneself. The other was to undergo an extreme transformation and attain grand rebirth in one's cultivation, allowing one to escape from it. Besides the test of samsara, Nirvana heaven was filled with extremely terrifying killing tribulations. There would be the invasion of heavenly demons and the ambush of terrifying figures from the starry sky. All of this was because the immortal road of supreme venerable was too terrifying. Once one became the lone lotus that bloomed on this path, one would possess the terrifying ability of being eternal and supreme in the immortal emperor realm. Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked when he found out about these secrets. Earlier, he'd already found out about some information related to the third tribulation of oblivion. But most of it wasn't detailed, and no one was able to explain it. For example, the core objective of the Wonder Lotus Banquet that was being held in Mirastar City right now was to discuss some secrets and matters related to Nirvana heaven. It was absolutely impossible for such insider information to be spread to the outside world. At this moment, everything that Qing Ying told him was undoubtedly insider information, and it was something that Lin Sun was utterly unaware of in the past. When he thought about how the immortal road of supreme venerable was actually related to the samsara laws of time, and would even draw the ambush of heavenly demons and the starry sky from the starry sky, Lin Sun's heart roiled. Merely the words eternal and supreme were too heaven-defying indeed, and it was too maddening and covetous. However, all of this is merely speculation before the arrival of the third tribulation of oblivion. Because Nirvana heaven has utterly never appeared in the past, and no one dares to determine exactly what will happen within it. Qing Ying said, "The only thing we know is that if one wants to possess the qualification and opportunity to enter Nirvana heaven when it descends, then one must satisfy two conditions." "Which two conditions?" asked Lin Sun. "The first is for experts that have stepped onto the path of oblivion, regardless of their cultivation. Even cultivators of the lower five realms have the qualification to enter. The second is for figures that have stepped foot into the immortal emperor realm. So long as one's strength is within the scope of the 9th level of the immortal emperor realm, then one can enter." As soon as Qing Ying finished speaking, Lin Sun's heart sank. Great Emperor Baki was in existence at the 8th level of the emperor realm, and his strength was already terrifying to the extreme. Lin Sun had exerted all his ability before barely defeating Great Emperor Baki. If a formidable expert at the 9th level of the Emperor realm participated in the competition for Nirvana heaven, then who could be a match for them? On the ancient starry sky path, perhaps there were extremely few old freaks at the 9th level of the Emperor realm. But when the Nirvana of freedom appeared, how could these old monsters resist the temptation of becoming immortal, invincible, and supreme? Even if other experts participated in it, how could they compete? It was no different than courting death. Qing Ying seemed to have discerned the worry in Lin Sun's heart, and he said in a light voice, "Young master, you don't have to worry about this. The stronger one's strength is, the more terrifying the dangers one suffers. If ordinary experts are like fireflies, then these old freaks are like bright lamps that draw the most terrifying dangers onto them. P.S. There will be 5 updates this weekend, and there will be another major update at the end of the month. There will be updates from time to time during this month. Chapter 22:01. Lin Sun's expression flickered. Nirvana, the path of immortality, the test of time, and samsara. This was a great creation from the power of order of the starry sky ancient path, but it was also an unpredictable disaster. Even the old antiques within the 9th level of the Emperor realm would participate in it. One could imagine how cruel and terrifying the competition would be. Who would be able to become the Lone Lotus? Child, is there anything else you want to ask? Qingying poured another cup of tea for Lin Sun. Her every move was breathtakingly beautiful. Lin Sun woke up from his contemplation and said, "When I came here, someone said that someone in the dark world is waiting for me to solve the problem. Do you know what that means?" Qingying was stunned and shook her head. "I really don't know." Although Lin Sun was mentally prepared, he still couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. What did the young man mean? Who in the dark world needed him to solve the problem? "Are you done?" Big Yellow's wolf-like howl sounded outside the hall. Lin Sun immediately woke up from his contemplation. "Child, in the period before the 3rd tribulation of oblivion, Senior Polearm and the others will take you to the purgatory of darkness for training. This is also an opportunity that Senior Zhongxiu has prepared for you." As Qingying spoke, he stood up and opened a scarlet-red umbrella. Back then, Senior Zhongxiu also proved his Tao there. Purgatory of darkness? Lin Sun followed Qingying out of the hall while thinking. Outside the hall, the drunkard and Big Yellow were already waiting. "Kid, although you are Master's junior brother in name, I won't take you seriously before getting Master's approval." Big Yellow held his head high, his face full of pride. "Oh, don't worry, I definitely won't take you seriously either." Lin Sun laughed. He really wanted to kill this arrogant Big Yellow. It was too arrogant and gave off an aura that deserved a beating. "Young fella, are you out of your mind? How dare you talk to me like that?" Big Yellow's eyes were fierce, and it was fierce. Lin Sun was still smiling. "You're not a human. If I take you seriously, isn't it the same as calling you a dog?" Puff. The drunkard immediately burst into laughter. Acting like a dog? What an image. Qingying next to him was obviously trying to hold back her laughter. She didn't expect that Lin Sun was so bold. But it made sense. Zhongxiu was his senior brother. No matter how arrogant this dog was, how dare he offend Zhongxiu? Howl! Big Yellow bit the drunkard's thigh, causing the latter to gasp in pain. He said in exasperation, "Big Yellow, what has it got to do with me? Why are you biting me?" Big Yellow responded fiercely. "Based on my identity, how can I bully a weak junior? So what if I bite you when you smile?" The drunkard's face darkened. Lin Sun was a little embarrassed. "Big Yellow, it's not right to bite people." Big Yellow bit the drunkard hard again and said, "I'm biting people for no reason. You're not convinced? Bite me." The drunkard looked like he wanted to cry, but had no tears. The man and the dog were at each other's throats, but he was the unlucky one who was stuck in the middle. Seeing that Lin Sun was about to say something, he hurriedly said, "Young friend, let's go." He was really worried that Lin Sun would say something to stimulate Big Yellow to bite him again. "Okay," Lin Sun agreed without hesitation. Big Yellow said arrogantly, "Boy, don't be complacent. Don't cry and beg me to save you when we enter the purgatory of darkness." Lin Sun directly retorted, "A good dog doesn't stand in the way. Lead the way." Big Yellow was so angry that he bared his teeth and pounced on the drunkard with a howl. The drunkard had already sensed the danger and rushed to the distance. The thick blood color pervaded the sea. A huge whirlpool slowly rotated like a tunnel leading to the depths of the sea, suspended there. Howl bursts of ghostly wails and wolf howls came from the depths of the whirlpool, making people shudder. This was the entrance to the purgatory of darkness. At the beginning of the primeval times, after the first tribulation of oblivion erupted, it caused the world of darkness to fall into great destruction, and numerous terrifying existences that were taken to be like gods were buried beneath this tribulation. From then on, the world of darkness was taken to be the place where the gods were buried. The drunkard stood on the side of the whirlpool and explained to Lin Sun. This purgatory of darkness is a primeval ruin left behind after the first tribulation of oblivion, and numerous ferocious spirits are buried beneath it. All of them possessed terrifying cultivations above the Emperor realm when they were alive, and they were formidable like gods. After countless years of changes, these evil spirits suppressed here have also undergone many transformations. Some evil spirits have become stronger than when they were alive. However, you don't have to worry. This purgatory of darkness is divided into 18 layers, and the evil spirits distributed in each layer are different. For you, it shouldn't be a problem to enter the upper 9 layers. Back then, His Honor entered the 9th layer alone, proved his way there, and set foot on the Emperor Road. You are now at the 3rd heaven of Quasi-Emperor realm. According to His Honor, the strength you possess should be above his at that time. You still have a great chance to enter the 9th layer. Hearing this, Lin Sun roughly understood. However, just as he was about to ask some more questions, Big Yellow next to him lifted his leg and put him into the whirlpool. He was completely defenseless. Wait till I come back. I'll definitely stew a dog like you. In the depths of the whirlpool, Lin Sun's exasperated voice sounded. Kid, you'd better think about how not to be tortured to death. Big Yellow looked up to the sky and laughed. His dog face was filled with complacency and arrogance. Is this really okay? The drunkard let out a long sigh, somewhat worried. The deeper you go in the purgatory of darkness, the more terrifying it is. If something happens to that kid, I'm sure that His Honor will definitely stew you. Big Yellow's body stiffened. His dog face was gloomy and uncertain. After a while, he said, Don't worry, I know Master's nature the best. Since he dared to let this kid come, it proves that this kid already has the ability to survive in the 9th layer of the purgatory of darkness. What's more, didn't I also survive in the purgatory of darkness? The drunkard's expression became strange. He remembered something from the past. A long time ago, this Big Yellow was brought here by His Honor. No matter what, Big Yellow refused to enter the purgatory of darkness. He hugged His Honor's thigh and cried. But in the end, he still went in. He was kicked into the purgatory of darkness by His Honor. Later, when Big Yellow returned, he looked miserable. He was all skin and bones, his body was covered with scars, and his dog leg was broken. It took him a whole year to recover his spirit. From then on, whenever Big Yellow heard the words purgatory of darkness, his tail would uncontrollably clamp between his legs. Thinking of this, the drunkard couldn't help but glance at Big Yellow's tail. The latter suddenly jumped up as if it was stimulated, howling and pouncing towards the drunkard. Where are you looking? Where are you looking? Aren't you afraid of being blind? Facing the crazy Big Yellow, the drunkard fled in a sorry state. Only Ching Ying was left in the field. She thought for a moment, raised her hand to form a sign, and then said, Now, how many people of our hidden fog house are training in this purgatory of darkness? Soon, an old voice sounded in the void. Miss, in the past 10,000 years, 237 quasi-emperors have left, and 154 quasi-emperors have entered. These years, 19 quasi-emperors have entered. That's good. Ching Ying breathed a sigh of relief. As long as there were people in the purgatory of darkness, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about not being able to find out something related to the purgatory of darkness when he entered. As the primordial ancestral land of the hidden fog house, every once in a while, there would be extremely outstanding experts of the hidden fog house selected to enter the purgatory of darkness for training. As long as the experts came out of the purgatory of darkness alive, their strength would change by leaps and bounds. However, these experts all held a life-saving jade talisman in their hands and could only practice in the first 3 levels of the purgatory of darkness. If they encountered a fatal danger, they would be transported out by the life-saving jade talisman. But Lin Sun was different. He didn't have a life-saving jade talisman. This was the order from the master of the bronze Sparrow Tower, which meant that Lin Sun had to survive in the purgatory of darkness by his own strength. This itself seemed extremely cruel. For countless years, among the Bronze Sparrow Tower and the Hidden Fog House, Only the master of the Bronze Sparrow Tower had entered the purgatory of darkness without a life-saving jade talisman. He was also the only one who reached the 9th level. Most of the other experts stopped in the first 3 levels, and there were some who entered the 3rd level, but the number was extremely small. For example, Goldie had reached the 7th level. Now, Lin Sun also entered the purgatory of darkness without a life-saving jade talisman. Could he prove his Tao in the purgatory of darkness? Qing Ying didn't know. The only thing she was worried about was whether Lin Sun would have an accident. The first level of the purgatory of darkness. The world was turbid, and the void was filled with a dark red light. The fierce and bloody aura was whistling between the heaven and the earth like a wanton gale. This place was extremely vast, just like a real purgatory world. Swish! As soon as Lin Sun's figure appeared, he immediately felt a majestic oppressive force, which made his body slightly stagnate, as if he was carrying a huge mountain on his back. If it was an ordinary person here, his body would have been crushed by the omnipresent pressure, and his body and soul would have been obliterated. This kind of power is enough to make it difficult for a Saint King to move an inch. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and, as the power ran around his body, the majestic pressure was immediately offset and resolved. Rumble. Before Lin Sun could continue sizing up the first level of the purgatory of darkness, the ground shook, and a wave of violent rumbling came from afar. It seemed like a powerful army was charging over with a shocking impetus. At the same time, a strong, brutal, and ferocious aura surged over, and it seemed material as it covered the heavens and the earth. Moreover, a wave of extremely ear-piercing screams could be faintly heard. Chapter 2202. In Lin Sun's Sea of Consciousness, nearly 100 ferocious souls were rushing towards him from afar. These ferocious souls were shrouded in blood-red light, riding on clouds and mist. They looked like a demon or a monster. When they roared and galloped, they were like a horrible army from hell. The whole world was shaking, and a horrible, bloody, murderous spirit soared into the sky. Their aura is no different from that of an expert in the 3rd step of the quasi-emperor realm. Lin Sun made a judgment in an instant. He couldn't help but be surprised. This was only the first level of the purgatory of darkness, but the ferocious souls here were already so powerful. If that was the case, then how terrifying would the vastness of the 9th layer be? Newcomer? Hide if you don't want to be eliminated. Suddenly, an explosive shout that was like a thunderclap resounded, and it surged through the surroundings. Lin Sun noticed that there was a strong aura lurking in the nearby area. It was a thin man in a black robe. He was vigorous and fierce, and his eyes were frightening. Lin Sun was not surprised, but happy. At least he could further explore the purgatory of darkness. What are you waiting for? Hide! The black-robed man shouted. He had been practicing in the first level for decades, so he knew the situation here best. Usually, there would not be such a large group of ferocious souls. Once surrounded, the consequences would be unimaginable. It should be known that there were hundreds of ferocious souls with the combat strength of the 3rd step of the quasi-emperor realm. In the past decades, the black-robed man had only seen such a large group of ferocious souls 3 times, and no one dared to fight against them. Don't worry, my friend. I just came to the purgatory of darkness and want to test the ability of these ferocious souls, Lin Sun said casually. As he spoke, the group of ferocious souls appeared in his field of vision with a monstrous bloody aura. The black-robed man was stunned and almost laughed out of anger. He had never seen such a bold guy. Lin Sun had just arrived, but he was clamoring to fight against a group of ferocious souls. He was too ignorant. When the black-robed man was about to say something, Lin Sun had already made his move. He put his fingers into a sword and slashed in the void, and a burst of sword chi burst out. Swish! This sword seemed to be able to split heaven and earth, deducing infinite mystery. It crossed the sky and chopped down. Looking from a distance, it was like the Milky Way falling from the 9th heaven. Pu. Before the thousands of ferocious spirits with strength equivalent to 3rd layer quasi-emperors could attack, They were enveloped by the sword chi, and their bodies exploded like paper, turning into a rain of blood that rained down from the sky. It was completely annihilated. The black-clothed man was dumbfounded, his eyes staring blankly. A single sword strike annihilated an army of vile spirits? After a while, he looked at Lin Sun and said, "My friend, are you also from Misty House?" His voice carried a wisp of respect. All those that were able to enter the purgatory of darkness to temper themselves were extraordinary figures that were selected from the hidden Mist House and Copper Sparrow Pavilion. How could the black-clothed man not understand that this fellow that had just arrived was an extraordinary figure? Sort of. Lin Sun answered casually. He stepped forward and took the initiative to talk to the black-robed man. Soon, he found out that the black-robed man was called Bo Chuan, and he was a first-layer quasi-emperor. He was the core successor of the Hidden Fog House, and he had been training in the first level of the Purgatory of Darkness for 39 years. 39 years ago, Bo Chuan was a perfect Saint King. Now, he was already at the first stage of the quasi-emperor realm. This could be said to be shocking. After all, not everyone could become a quasi-emperor as they wished. When Lin Sun learned from Bo Chuan that the experts who came to the Purgatory of Darkness would wear a life-saving jade talisman, his face darkened. He thought of the dog that kicked him into the whirlpool and gnashed his teeth with hatred. Naturally, he blamed this on Big Yellow. And when Bo Chuan learned that the purpose of Lin Sun's trip was to kill his way to the 9th level, he was stunned. The 9th level. Since ancient times, only the Master of Bronze Sparrow Pavilion had reached the 9th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. It was there that the Master of Bronze Sparrow Pavilion became an emperor. Bo Chuan took a deep breath and asked, "Brother Lin, when you came here, no one told you how dangerous the Purgatory of Darkness is?" Lin Sun shook his head. Bo Chuan revealed a knowing look and said, "Brother Lin, it's not that I want to discourage you, but you still don't understand the Purgatory of Darkness." As he spoke, he told Lin Sun some of the information he knew. In other words, even if you have a life-saving jade talisman, you can only use it in the first 3 levels? Lin Sun finally understood. Bo Chuan said, "Yes, from the 4th level down, the evil spirits distributed are extremely powerful. An expert like you, who is a 3rd-layer quasi-emperor, would not dare to enter easily. In the last 10,000 years, only a few dozen ruthless people have ventured below the 4th level. As for the 9th level, it is said that even emperors will meet with misfortune if they enter. It is definitely a place of great danger." Lin Sun suddenly understood. "I see." After that, he asked a few more key questions, and Bo Chuan answered all of them. In the Purgatory of Darkness, the spiritual chi was exhausted and the law of great ways did not exist. To restore one's physical strength, one had to carry a large number of cultivation resources, and the other had to rely on hunting evil spirits to collect great way source crystals. According to Bo Chuan, those evil spirits were formed from the remnant souls, wills, and blood chi of the terrifying people who died here in primitive times. And the great way source crystals were the essence of the great ways condensed from the cultivation of those terrifying people who died here. When they were alive, emperors possessed supreme cultivation and controlled terrifying Tao. But after they died, the power of the great ways they controlled would dissipate along with them. However, it was different in the Purgatory of Darkness. All those terrifying figures that were buried here had transformed into a part of this expanse of the heavens and the earth after they perished. And as time passed, they gradually condensed into grand Tao quintessence crystals. The quality of the great way source crystals also differed. The lower one went in the Purgatory of Darkness, the more astonishing the quality of the great way source crystals. Some rare great way source crystals even had fragments of the law of Emperor sealed inside, and could be said to be rare treasures in the outside world. However, Bo Chuan had not seen such a great way source crystal before, because he had been training in the 1st level all these years, and had no chance to come into contact with such treasures. After understanding this, Lin Sun felt a lot more at ease. When he intended to make a move, Bo Chuan said abruptly, "Brother Lin, I'm about to break through to the peak of the 2nd level of the quasi-emperor realm, and I intend to head to the second level to temper myself. You just arrived here, yet your strength is extremely extraordinary, and it far surpasses mine. Why don't we make a move together?" Lin Sun thought for a moment, and then nodded in agreement. "However, my objective is to kill my way into the 9th level, so I'm afraid it's impossible for me to always be by your side." Bo Chuan was astounded. He'd already told Lin Sun about the dangers of the Purgatory of Darkness, yet Lin Sun still seemed to hold an unrealistic thought. Is it because the skilled are bold, or is it because the ignorant are fearless? Bo Chuan didn't ridicule or attack Lin Sun, and he just said, "Brother Lin, I believe that once you truly witness how terrifying the Purgatory of Darkness is, you'll surely change your mind." Obviously, he didn't believe Lin Sun at all. Lin Sun didn't explain anything. In next to no time, the two of them flashed towards the distance. The Purgatory of Darkness was an extremely mysterious and dangerous place, and it was a place where the gods were buried after the first calamity of oblivion came to an end. Simply speaking, it was like a world of tombs. However, there were no tombs here, and there were only countless ferocious spirits. The Purgatory of Darkness was divided into 18 levels. Every level had a blood-colored passageway that was shaped like a vortex, and it led to the next level. According to Bo Chuan, there was no restriction on entering the next level from the previous level, and it could be entered at any time. But if one wanted to return to the previous level from the next level, then there were only two ways. One was to wait for an opportunity, and an opportunity to freely enter and exit the blood-colored passageway would appear every once in a while. The second was to rely on one's own strength to kill one's way out forcefully, and this method was the most difficult. Lin Sun committed all of this to memory, yet he didn't care too much about it. With Bo Chuan leading the way, it allowed Lin Sun to save a great deal of time in finding the way. As the saying goes, an old horse knows the way. All along the way, the two of them encountered some ferocious spirits. All of them had ferocious and savage auras, and their entire bodies were suffused with blood-colored fluctuations. They moved out in groups of 2 or 3, or moved out in groups of 3 or 5. These naturally weren't obstructions to Lin Sun, and he casually wiped them out as easily as pinching a fly to death. Bo Chuan noticed all of this, and he had no choice but to admit in his heart that this fellow that had just arrived here really did possess extremely shocking ability. If it was him who fought these ferocious spirits, then he might not necessarily be able to do it so easily. On the other hand, Lin Sun had collected some great Tao origin crystals all along the way. These treasures came in various shapes, large and small, and all of them were translucent and crystalline. They were suffused with pure and thick energy of the Grand Tao, and a thumb-sized one was comparable to the energy possessed by 10,000 Tao crystals. It was extremely shocking. Lin Sun tried to refine and absorb one, and he instantly noticed that great Tao origin crystals weren't just capable of replenishing the energy he consumed, they were greatly beneficial to the energy of the Grand Tao he possessed as well. He couldn't help but feel slight anticipation because of this. Exactly what sort of shocking profundities would be contained within those great Tao origin crystals that contain Emperor Tao Law's fragments? Swoosh! After the time for an incense stick to burn, a strand of dazzling divine radiance suddenly shot into the sky and tore through the distant space, and it seemed to be extremely dazzling in this gray and hazy world. Another treasure has appeared. Bo Chuan was already shouting loudly with excitement. "Brother Lin, our luck isn't bad, and we've encountered a fortune. Come, quickly go take it. Otherwise, it would truly be a pity if it was seized by others." Swoosh! As he spoke, he'd already teleported and charged over with all his might. A treasure? Lin Sun's black eyes were deep. He noticed as well that the strand of dazzling divine radiance was rather extraordinary, and he was faintly able to discern clearly that it was a palm-sized azure cauldron. As it flew, it flowed with a gorgeous rain of the Grand Tao that was resplendent and multicolored, and it was a shocking scene. As he pondered, Lin Sun charged over as well. Withdraw. Bo Chuan withdrew a golden and dazzling whip and swung it out from afar, and it instantly coiled around the azure cauldron. But before Bo Chuan could feel happy, the azure cauldron emitted a shocking fluctuation, and then it droned as it easily struggled free from the golden whip before fleeing towards the extreme distance. It seemed to be extremely intelligent. Chapter 2203. The green cauldron glowed brilliantly. Although it was only the size of a palm, it was full of spirituality. With a light flash, it was about to escape. Bo Chuan was anxious. This was definitely a rare treasure. If he missed it, he might not be able to see it again. In the 39 years of training on the first level, Bo Chuan had only seen the birth of a treasure 4 times. Unfortunately, he had only seen it and had no chance to fight for it. But now it was different. As he was about to make a move, he saw a rope emitting dazzling golden light sweep across the sky. It twirled lightly in the void and entangled the green cauldron. They were like prey that had been tied up, unable to move at all. Whoosh! The next moment, the green cauldron fell into Lin Sun's palm along with the golden rope. The golden rope was the golden rope of treasure binding, a trophy Lin Sun had obtained from Huangfu Xiaonong in the ancient immortal forbidden area. It was the most precious treasure of the Qin Taoist court. Like the legendary copper coin of Treasurefall, it was said to be able to bind many emperor treasures in the world. Back then, the golden rope of treasure binding had even bound the lifeless seal for a moment. Lin Sun had to use the Endless Way Pagoda to suppress it. Lin Sun put away the golden rope of treasure binding and looked at the green cauldron. It was the size of a palm and was green like glass. There was a layer of natural Taoist patterns on the cauldron. Unfortunately, the cauldron was missing a leg, and there was a crack at the mouth, greatly destroying the perfect charm it should have had. What a treasure! Bo Chuan walked over, his eyes glued to the green cauldron. His face was full of uncontrollable envy. In an instant, the treasure was taken. No matter how envious he was, he didn't dare to compete with Lin Sun for it. Here you go. Lin Sun threw the small green cauldron to Bo Chuan. The latter caught in a hurry and was stunned. You gave it to me? His face was full of disbelief. I don't need it, Lin Sun said casually. The small green cauldron was indeed magical. Although it was incomplete, it was not comparable to ordinary emperor treasures. However, for Lin Sun, even if he accepted the cauldron, it would soon become food for Wu Kei and the Broken Blade Spirit. Since that was the case, he might as well give it to Bo Chuan to thank him for his guidance. Bo Chuan's entire body began to tremble. He was too excited. He couldn't help but say, Brother Lin, the treasures left behind in this hidden purgatory of darkness aren't ordinary. Almost all of them were left behind during the primordial era. If it's an ordinary treasure, then it would have lost all its intelligence a long time ago and vanished from the world after suffering the corrosion of countless years. On the other hand, treasures that are able to be preserved until now and still possess intelligence aren't ordinary imperial artifacts. You really want to give it to me? He was still in disbelief. Lin Sun said with a smile, Just take it. Don't talk nonsense. Only then was Bo Chuan certain that all of this was real. However, right when he was about to put the treasure away, an icy cold voice suddenly resounded from afar. Bo Chuan, I've been eyeing that treasure for a long time. However, I still have to thank you for subduing it. Now hand it over. In the distance, several figures turned into divine rainbows and came from the void. There were 3 men and 2 women. All of them had strong auras and extremely fierce momentum. Only those who had been fighting all year round could have such momentum. The one who spoke was a man in a purple robe. He was standing on a blood-red saber. His figure was strong, and his eyes were full of indifference. As soon as they arrived, they all fixed their eyes on the green cauldron in Bo Chuan's hand. They couldn't help showing a trace of eagerness. Lu Xiao, what do you mean by the treasure you set your eyes on is yours? Bo Chuan's face was gloomy. Although he and Lu Xiao all came from Bronze Sparrow Tower, the relationship between them wasn't very good. Especially in this hidden purgatory of darkness, there was still competition between them. Things like fighting for treasures like this often happened. As long as no one killed anyone, Bronze Sparrow Tower wouldn't care about these trivial matters. Lu Xiao's expression was indifferent as he said, Bo Chuan, I know that you're unwilling. How about this? I won't make you work for nothing. Take these 10 great Tao origin crystals as a reward for helping me subdue the treasure." As he spoke, he flicked his finger, and a row of dazzling great Tao origin crystals shot out. There were exactly 10 of them, and they rolled on the ground in front of Bo Chuan. "You want to exchange 10 great Tao origin crystals for a miraculous treasure?" Bo Chuan's face was livid, and he was seething with anger. "What if I don't agree?" Lu Xiao laughed. The 2 men and 1 woman beside him also laughed. Their smiles were filled with playfulness, pity, and disdain. They were all quasi-emperors who were used to seeing the dangers of the world. Who wouldn't know what would happen next? Bo Chuan's current behavior was nothing more than unwillingness. Lin Sun also saw this. He was very clear that this kind of thing was far too common. On the entire ancient path of the starry sky, one could almost see such cases of greed and fighting over treasures. But the point was that this green cauldron was given to Bo Chuan after he had subdued it. At this time, Bo Chuan also looked at Lin Sun with a helpless, annoyed, and unwilling look. "What? Are you going to fight with your friend to see if he can keep this treasure?" A woman with an enchanting figure, snow-white skin, and fiery red lips spoke, her watery eyes charming and alluring. Another thin man said, "Friend, you look very unfamiliar. Have you just arrived? I advise you to stay away from Bo Chuan. This guy offended someone he shouldn't have offended a few years ago. Now, in this purgatory of darkness, no one dares to act with him." Bo Chuan's eyes flashed with anger, blue veins bulging on his forehead. Obviously, the thin man's words had poked the scar in his heart. The thin man said sarcastically, "What, did I say something wrong? 9 years ago, which fool offended senior brother Meng Xingzi for a woman?" "Enough!" Bo Chuan hissed, his eyes turning red. But the thin man laughed and said to himself, "Look, you're flustered and exasperated." He looked at Lin Sun and said, "Friend, I've made it very clear. You're new here and know nothing. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Don't hang out with Bo Chuan. Otherwise, if you're seen by senior brother Meng Xingzi, you'll be in big trouble." Lin Sun didn't know who Meng Xingzi was, and he didn't care who Meng Xingzi was. At this time, he didn't even know who these robbers were. But it didn't matter. For Lin Sun, he didn't care who these robbers were. Besides, he had lost his patience at this moment. This treasure was subdued by me, and I promised to act with Bo Chuan. Now I just want to ask you one question. Are you sure you want to block here? Lin Sun looked indifferent, and his tone was very casual. But as soon as this sentence came out, Lu Xiao, the thin man, and others were all stunned. It seemed that they didn't expect that this newcomer would be so tough. Lu Xiao raised his eyebrows and said with a cold and unhappy look, "Friend," before he finished his words. An unparalleled and terrible power spread from Lin Sun, oppressing Lu Xiao like an avalanche. The latter breathed hard, and with a bang, he was knocked out and fell on the ground dozens of feet away, coughing up blood. There was a dead silence, and everyone looked shocked. Lin Sun said indifferently, "I just asked you whether you want to block the way, and I don't intend to listen to your nonsense. Also, you don't deserve to be my friend. Bo Chuan, let's go." As he said, he lifted his foot and walked forward. "Do you know what you were doing?" The thin man was fierce in appearance, and he had already noticed that something was wrong. Bang! The next moment, he was also shaken away like a kite with a broken string, with blood spurting from his mouth and nose. He had no strength to struggle and resist. The enchanting woman and the other person were horrified, as if falling into an ice cave. They realized that they had kicked an iron plate this time, and their faces changed. Lu Xiao and the thin man were both at the second level of the quasi-emperor realm, and they already had the foundation and power to enter the second level. But at this time, they looked so weak that they couldn't even resist the opponent's pressure. This was terrible. For a moment, they looked at Lin Sun with fear and horror in their eyes. They couldn't imagine how powerful he was. Lin Sun didn't look at all this, and walked away with Bo Chuan. Someone like Lu Xiao could perhaps already be considered a top figure amongst his peers. He even possessed a foundation that was sufficient for any great faction to think highly of him. But in Lin Sun's eyes, if it were in the outside world, he would have killed such people many times. Clang! With a sharp sound of saber, a ray of dazzling saber chi swept up like a thunderbolt and chopped towards Lin Sun from behind. The saber chi was dense and dazzling. Lin Sun didn't look back. An abyss-like power emerged from his body and easily crushed the saber chi. The attacker was Lu Xiao. When he saw this scene, his face changed completely, and he did not hesitate to escape to the far distance. Chi, what was even faster than him, was a streak of dazzling and resplendent sword chi. It flashed through the air and pierced a bloody hole in his chest, causing him to cry out in pain. At this moment, he almost suspected that he was dead. The sword chi was completely invincible, so sharp that it made him desperate. "If you want to die, you can continue," Lin Sun said indifferently in the distance. Lu Xiao trembled all over, and his expression was uncertain. The others were horrified to the extreme as well, and they went silent like cicadas in winter. Until Lin Sun's figure disappeared from their sight, they didn't dare to move again, for they were really frightened by the scene just now. "Let's go." After a long time, Lu Xiao got up and said with a livid face. "Where to?" asked the enchanting woman. "To find senior brother Meng Xingzi." Lu Xiao gnashed his teeth, and his eyes were full of resentment. At the same time, Bo Chuan, who followed Lin Sun, opened his mouth and was about to say something, but was interrupted by Lin Sun. "I'm not helping you. It's their fault for blocking the way." Bo Chuan's expression was complicated, but he still said, "Brother Lin, what they said before is right. If you act with me, you will be regarded as an enemy. Let's go separately. I, Bo Chuan, will try my best to repay the kindness of helping me and giving me treasures this time." Saying this, he turned around and was about to leave. Chapter 2204. Lin Sun sighed softly and pressed Bo Chuan's shoulder, saying, "If you leave, who will lead the way for me?" Bo Chuan said anxiously, "Brother Lin, you just came to the purgatory of darkness, so you don't know that Meng Xingzi has already ordered that anyone who dares to act with me will be his enemy. If I act with you, I will be harming you." As he spoke, he told Lin Sun the origin of Meng Xingzi. But who would have thought that after listening, Lin Sun didn't take it seriously and didn't even bother to talk about this topic, saying, "Are you going or not?" Bo Chuan was stunned. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Go." Lin Sun laughed. "That's right." A quarter of an hour later, two figures appeared in front of a bloody vortex tunnel, which was the way to the second floor. Whoosh whoosh. Soon, the two figures disappeared in it. The second floor of the purgatory of darkness. The world here was still dark, scarlet, and oppressive. The world was filled with a brutal and destructive atmosphere, which made it difficult to breathe. When he appeared in this world, Bo Chuan staggered and almost fell down. The reason was that the oppressive force in the second floor was more and more terrible. Walking in it was like carrying a mountain, and you would be oppressed from all directions. Glancing at Bo Chuan, Lin Sun had probably judged that Bo Chuan could only practice in the second floor at most. If he went any further, he would be in danger. Chi! A bloody shadow as thick as a thumb sprang out of the void, like a bolt of lightning, and silently stabbed at the back of Lin Sun's head. Lin Sun didn't look back, but directly caught the bloody figure with a casual grasp. This was a fierce soul, full of blood and chi, with twisted and ferocious facial features, and a pair of mung bean-like eyes full of violence and scarlet. Its power was no less than that of Zhu Shi in the first level of Quasi-Emperor. But now, it was imprisoned by Lin Sun like an earthworm, without any room to struggle. Its fangs were densely covered with a sharp hiss. The resentment is not small. Lin Sun looked at it for a while, and then he used his palm and fingers to incinerate the evil soul. There was an almond-sized source crystal in his palm, which was obviously better than the source crystal obtained on the first floor. Bo Chuan felt dizzy watching Lin Sun kill such a vile soul so easily. If it were him, he would have to experience a fierce battle. "Let's go and check out the mysteries of this floor." Lin Sun led the way. It was the first time for Bo Chuan to enter the second floor, so it was meaningless to count on him to lead the way. In the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Along the way, Lin Sun and the others encountered 19 attacks. The strongest of the ferocious spirits that appeared were as strong as a peak second-layer quasi-emperor, while the weakest was as strong as a third-layer quasi-emperor. To Buchuan, the second level was simply too dangerous. If it wasn't for Lin Sun leading the way, he would have long since fled who knows how many times. But it was not enough for Lin Sun. He was like a hot knife through butter. Buchuan was so shocked along the way that he was a little numb to the killing stance. He was unable to imagine when such a heaven-defying and ruthless person had appeared in the Copper Sparrow Tower. One day later, I'm going to go to the third floor. Lin Sun made up his mind. In this day, he had already figured out the situation of the second floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. He only had one feeling: boredom. His only gain was that he had collected hundreds of precious Great Way Source crystals of different sizes from the vile souls he had killed along the way. As for relic treasures like the Green Cauldron, he had not seen a single one. Clearly, as Buchuan had said, the appearance of relic treasures also depended on luck. It was a fortuitous encounter that could not be sought. "Brother Lin, do you really plan to go to the 9th floor?" Buchuan could not help but ask. At first, he did not believe Lin Sun's words at all, thinking that Lin Sun was a newcomer and did not understand the horrors of the Purgatory of Darkness. But now, after following Lin Sun for so long, he had long recognized the terror of Lin Sun's combat strength. Instead, he was somewhat skeptical. Lin Sun grunted and gave a portion of the Great Way Source crystals he had collected these days to Buchuan. Then he planned to take his leave. Buchuan was very reluctant to part with Lin Sun, but he knew that if he kept following Lin Sun, there would be no chance for Lin Sun to fight at all, and it was bound to be impossible for him to temper his cultivation. Taking a deep breath, Buchuan cupped his hands and said, "Brother Lin, take care. I'm looking forward to you being able to reproduce the demeanor of the Copper Sparrow Tower Master and kill your way to the 9th floor." Lin Sun smiled and was just about to say something when he suddenly frowned, and his black eyes looked into the distance like lightning. Whoosh, the space in the distance roiled as numerous figures appeared. The one in the lead was an extraordinarily handsome young man who wore crimson armor, had long hair that fluttered in the wind, and a broadsword hung from his waist. Beside this young man was a group of men and women, including Lu Xiao, the enchanting woman, and the others. When he saw the handsome young man in the lead, Buchuan's expression changed instantly, and he said without hesitation, "Brother Lin, leave quickly." His voice revealed anxiety, panic, and uneasiness. Lin Sun patted Buchuan on the shoulder and said, "I'll definitely leave, but before I leave, there's no harm in helping you solve some problems." Buchuan was stunned. At the same time, Lu Xiao in the distance pointed to Lin Sun and said in a cold voice, "Senior Brother Meng Xingzi, it's that guy who disobeyed your order and insisted on going against us." The handsome young man in red armor nodded, stared at Lin Sun expressionlessly, and said, "What else do you want to explain?" There was a sense of superiority in his voice. He was Meng Xingzi. Buchuan had explained to Lin Sun before that this man entered the Purgatory of Darkness 193 years ago and was regarded as one of the 7 peerless in the quasi-emperor realm of the Copper Sparrow Tower. With fierce combat power and strong foundation, he was like a leading figure among his peers. At a glance, Lin Sun found that the man's breath was steady and his power was indeed extraordinary. He could be regarded as a peerless figure among the top quasi-emperors. But that was all. A long time ago, Lin Sun had looked down on his peers. Even ordinary emperors could not make him feel any fear. Under such circumstances, how could he take Meng Xingzi seriously? "Senior Brother Meng, Brother Lin is a newcomer and doesn't know anything. This matter has nothing to do with him. If you want to punish him, I'll bear it alone." Buchuan gritted his teeth and stepped forward bravely. Obviously, he was really worried that he would implicate Lin Sun and intended to shoulder all the responsibilities. This made Lin Sun feel helpless and emotional. This guy was very kind-hearted, but his eyesight was a little poor. "You think it has nothing to do with you?" Lu Zhao's face was full of hatred. "Let me tell you, Buchuan, today, not only that guy, but also you can't escape." Which one? If you two know what's good for you, kneel down quickly. The enchanting woman shouted. They were all fearless, as if they could be lawless and fearless as long as Meng Xingzi was here. Wuchuan's eyes were bloodshot and red. He clenched his fists and said in a hoarse voice, "If you have the guts, kill me today. Otherwise, I will pay you back tenfold in the future." His voice was powerful and resonant, filled with incomparable determination. The atmosphere in the field was silent for a moment. No one dared to kill a fellow disciple in the purgatory of darkness. This was an iron law. Even if Lu Xiao and others dared to trample and torture Buochuan, they did not dare to kill him. But it was obvious that Buochuan hated them completely. If they didn't kill him this time, he would definitely retaliate against them in the future. Retaliate? Tenfold in the future? Buochuan, how dare you? Meng Xingzi's voice was cold, and his eyes were surging with terrible coldness. I'll give you a chance. Kneel down and apologize to me now, and I can let bygones be bygones. I don't even mind letting you two go this time. Otherwise, you should know how serious the consequences of offending me are. As he said this, Buochuan's face flushed red with anger. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly took a step forward and said, Buochuan, I don't care what kind of grievances you have with these people, and I don't care who is right and who is wrong. But since it happened and I'm involved in it, I can't just stand by. Lu Xiao and others' faces changed slightly. Even if they were full of confidence, they still couldn't help but feel terrified and incomparable fear in front of Lin Sun. Meng Xingzi frowned and said, It seems that you are not convinced? Or should I say, this is the explanation you are giving me? His voice was cold. Lin Sun ignored him and said to Buochuan, Besides, your eyesight is really poor. You have to see clearly who is standing and who is kneeling. As soon as he finished speaking, he strode forward in the void. You're courting death. Meng Xingzi's eyes flashed with killing intent, and he suddenly waved his palm. Boom! The palm force was like a knife, emitting dazzling fire law and tearing the sky. But this blow failed. Lin Sun's figure flashed and appeared in front of Lu Xiao. The latter was so scared that he was stiff all over. Before he could react, Lin Sun's palm pressed on his shoulder. Kneel down. When the indifferent voice sounded, Lu Xiao's body, like a piece of wood, fell from the air and knelt on the ground. The earth trembled and the smoke and dust dispersed. The nearby enchanting woman and the thin man all changed their faces and dodged without hesitation. At the same time, they screamed and asked Meng Xingzi for help. In fact, Meng Xingzi had already rushed to Lin Sun with a huge broadsword in his hand. But Lin Sun didn't even look at him. His figure flashed, and Meng Xingzi's attack failed again. Kneel down. At the same time, Lin Sun's indifferent voice sounded. Without his movement, the enchanting woman, the thin man, and others knelt down like dumplings in a pot. Even those strong practitioners who came with Meng Xingzi were not spared. They were suppressed by the terrible pressure and knelt down one by one. They were imprisoned on the ground and couldn't move. When Meng Xingzi was about to attack for the third time, he looked around and found that there was no one standing around except him. All this happened almost in an instant. It was incredibly fast. Meng Xingzi's face changed completely, and an uncontrollable chill surged in his heart. How could this guy be so powerful? Who on earth was he? Goldfish would write an analysis post on Master of the Heart on the public account tomorrow. Chapter 2205. Buochuan's eyes widened, and he forgot to breathe. There was no earth-shattering battle, no deafening sound of fighting, and no dazzling Taoist light sweeping across. But as Lin Sun went out, strong people knelt down one after another, seeming to be so casual and composed. But Buochuan knew that this was a kind of absolutely crushing attitude, a kind of unparalleled style of invincibility. Is it true that my eyesight is too poor? Until now, I haven't found that Brother Lin beside me is actually a nature-defying existence that can't be measured by common sense? Buochuan was in trance. He suddenly felt that the anger, anxiety, and worry he had before seemed very unnecessary. There was a dead silence in the field. Meng Xingzi, who was about to attack for the third time, stopped there with a gloomy look. He stared at Lin Sun in front of him, as if he knew Lin Sun again. Seeing this scene, Chuan felt an indescribable sense of absurdity in his heart. Was this one of the 7 great peaks that he feared and feared? Was this Meng Xingzi, who could make all the peers in Bronze Sparrow Tower bow their heads with a single order? Right now, he seemed to be frightened as well. Who on earth are you? Why haven't I heard of such a figure in Bronze Sparrow Tower before? Meng Xingzi said in a low voice. His previous aloof posture had disappeared, and his face was full of solemnity and surprise. Lin Sun ignored him and walked forward in the air. His tall figure was indifferent and extraordinary, with an unparalleled style. Kneel down. His voice sounded like a thunder, hitting Meng Xingzi's heart. He almost couldn't believe that Lin Sun dared to ask him to kneel down. An indescribable feeling of shame, anger, and humiliation stimulated Meng Xingzi's face to look ferocious. He roared and attacked with all his strength. Get lost. The horrible law of fire spread from Meng Xingzi like a volcanic eruption. He took out half of a gray broken spear and swept it out. Boom! Chaotic chi was released from the spear like a landslide and a tsunami. The unparalleled, murderous spirit disturbed the world. For a time, there was a terrible scene of the sky falling, the earth cracking, the sun and the moon breaking. This severely damaged spear was clearly not an ordinary spear. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with a strange light. What a familiar power. The remaining half of the spear seemed to be... Boom! When the spear arrived, its unparalleled sharpness easily tore apart Lin's attack. The bone-piercing killing intent forced Lin to use his real strength to resolve it. Kill! Meng Xingzi's imposing aura was like a madman after he succeeded with a single strike. The damaged half of the spear carried surging chaotic chi, and when it slashed down, it seemed as if it could pierce through the sky and crush the starry sky, causing its impetus to be extremely shocking. Lin Sun dodged with a touch of joy in his black eyes. He was finally sure that the remaining half of the spear should also be a Kunlun Emperor weapon. Why are you hiding? Aren't you very strong? Meng Xingzi shouted loudly in high spirits as he brandished his spear, and he was like a god that fought the heavens and the earth. Boom! The spear broke through the air and came to Lin Sun in a flash, with unparalleled sharpness. But at this moment, suddenly, a piece of black copper appeared in Lin Sun's palm and blocked the spear. Meng Xingzi's face suddenly changed. The spear in his hand seemed to be firmly stuck by a magnet. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull it back for a while. Lin Sun smiled slightly and shook his wrist. The broken half of the spear flew out of Meng Xingzi's hand and fell into Lin Sun's palm together with the black copper. No! Give me back my treasure! Give me back my treasure! Meng Xingzi turned pale with fright, and his eyes turned red. He rushed forward violently, as if he was desperate. Obviously, this half of the spear was also extremely important to him. Unfortunately, he, who had lost this half of the spear, was no longer a threat to Lin Sun. Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! Meng Xingzi was smashed down from the air and knelt on the ground. His body was imprisoned by an unparalleled force, and he couldn't stand up at all. He raised his head, stared at Lin Sun, who was standing in the air with his eyes wide open, and roared, "Give me back my treasure! Give it back to me!" Lin Sun ignored him. The black copper was the fragment left by the Kunlun source furnace of treasure refining, which contained the original aura of the source furnace. Because of this, the half of the spear could be easily subdued. At this time, looking at the broken spear, Lin Sun found that although it was seriously damaged, it still exuded a chilling murderous spirit. It was like a peerless murderous weapon, which could pierce the sky and penetrate the void of eternity. Just looking at it, Lin Sun's eyes hurt and his mind trembled. A name came to Lin Sun's mind involuntarily. The Great Way Empyrean Spear, one of the 9 emperor weapons of Kunlun. Where did you get this treasure? Lin Sun looked at Meng Xingzi, and he couldn't help feeling surprised. He didn't expect that he would encounter another emperor weapon of Kunlun in this purgatory of darkness. Meng Xingzi shouted like a madman. This treasure belongs to senior brother Nye Yunji. If he knows that you robbed this treasure, he will kill you without hesitation. Come on, give it back to me. Give it back to me. Nye Yunji. In the distance, Buchuan's face changed greatly, and he said quickly, Brother Lin, Nye Yunji is the head of the 7 great masters of the Bronze Sparrow Tower. He came to this purgatory of darkness 3,000 years ago to practice. It is said that he has already killed his way to the 6th floor. If there is no accident, I am afraid that he has already become an emperor. Now you understand that if you dare to take this treasure for yourself, you will definitely die. Meng Xingzi shouted, Nye Yunji doesn't care about the rules, and he doesn't care about the rules when he kills people. Lin Sun put away the half of the spear calmly, and then said, From now on, this treasure is mine. Whether you or Nye Yunji, if you want to take it back, just come to me. You. Meng Xingzi lost his wits as if he was struck by lightning. Lin Sun said to himself, Also, from today on, in this purgatory of darkness, anyone who dares to bully Buchuan is my enemy, and there is only one end for those who are my enemy, death. The word death resounded in the field like a thunder, making Meng Xingzi, Lu Xiao, and others tremble in their hearts and change their expressions. This was an undisguised threat. But for Buchuan, Lin Sun's words were like an unexpected warm current, which suddenly surged all over his body. He was caught unprepared and had the impulse to cry. In the past 39 years, since he offended Meng Xingzi, he struggled to survive on the 1st floor alone. No one dared to contact him, and everyone who saw him rejected and isolated him as if he was a snake or a scorpion. He had known Lin Sun for less than 2 days, but Lin Sun protected him all the way, regarded him as a friend, and even offended Meng Xingzi and others. How could Buchuan not be moved by this? At this point, Lin Sun had planned to leave and go to the next floor. But at this moment, Meng Xingzi begged in a sad voice, Brother Lin, this treasure is extremely important. If I lose it, it is very likely to kill some people of my sect. Please be merciful. Meng Xingzi looked gloomy. You don't know that a big disaster has happened on the 4th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. He told the whole story one by one. It turned out that a fierce soul overlord with wisdom and consciousness appeared on the 4th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness and suppressed the 4 overmatches of the Bronze Sparrow Tower. The fierce soul overlord bluntly said that only by handing over the broken spear could he save the 4 overmatches. So, this treasure has nothing to do with Nye Yunji at all, and it belongs to you? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said. Meng Xingzi's expression was bitter. That's right. I'm using Nye Yunji's name to intimidate you and make you back off. Moreover, if this treasure really belongs to Nye Yunji, why would he lend it to me? Lin Sun thought for a while and asked, Why does the fierce soul overlord know about this spear? Because this treasure was originally a relic from the 4th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. When this treasure appeared, not only my companions and I, but also the fierce soul overlord targeted it. At this time, Meng Xingzi no longer concealed and said, Although I was lucky to get this treasure in the end, my companions were suppressed by the fierce soul overlord. I alone am no match for the overlord of the vile spirits. The reason why I've returned from the 4th floor is to find some helpers. If there's really no other way, I can only hand over this treasure in exchange for the lives of my companions. Speaking of this, Meng Xingzi begged, Brother Lin, you should understand now that if I lose this treasure, my companions will all die. Lin Sun was a little surprised that Meng Xingzi was so loyal. At this time, Buchuan suddenly transmitted his voice to Lin. Brother Lin, don't listen to his nonsense. This guy is not as righteous as he said. There must be a trap. Lin Sun narrowed his black eyes slightly and thought for a while. Then, he looked at Meng Xingzi and said, You come with me. Meng Xingzi was stunned. Brother Lin, what do you mean? Don't you want to save people? I can help you, Lin Sun said casually. Meng Xingzi's face changed slightly. Brother Lin, the fierce soul overlord is extremely powerful. He controls all the fierce souls in the fourth floor. In that world, he's like a dominator. Before he finished, he was interrupted by Lin Sun. Are you going or not? Meng Xingzi's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and said, go. Lin Sun looked at Buochuan and said with a smile, Buochuan, have a good experience. See you later. As he said, he waved his sleeve and rolled up Meng Xingzi, who was imprisoned on the ground, and moved away. Brother Lin, take care of yourself, Buochuan murmured in his heart. On the ground in the distance, Lu Xiao and others had already climbed up from the ground, and they were all listless like frosted eggplants. They looked at Buochuan with resentment and undisguised coldness in their eyes, but no one dared to go forward to deal with Buochuan. Lin Sun's previous words were like an invisible deterrent. As long as Lin Sun was alive, they dared not act rashly. Swish. Chapter 2206. The third level of the Purgatory of Darkness. In the murky and dark bloody world, Lin Sun moved and flew, not hiding his aura at all. He was like a bright rainbow. Compared with the second level, the oppressive force in the third level was much stronger, and the brutal and bloody aura raged like a hurricane. Just this kind of dangerous and harsh environment was enough to make a second stage quasi-emperor unable to move an inch. Boom! Before long, a group of ferocious souls rushed out with boiling blood, stirring up the universe, and rushed to kill Lin Sun. Every single fierce spirit possessed the strength of a peak second stage realm and above, and their auras were ferocious. If it was someone like Buochuan who came here, he would definitely be in danger. But for Lin Sun, it was still not enough. His figure did not stop, whistling forward, and wherever he passed, the ferocious souls in front of him exploded and shattered. Meng Xingzi, who was held in Lin Sun's hand like a chicken, was dumbfounded. Although he now had the combat strength of the third stage quasi-emperor, he did not dare to be so rampant in the third level. If he was entangled by those ferocious souls, it would take a lot of effort to kill them. But compared with Lin Sun, it was a world of difference. In just a quarter of an hour, Lin Sun had come to the whirlpool passage to the fourth level. Brother Lin, after entering the fourth level, the life-saving jade talisman will lose its effect. Once you encounter an accident, you will never come out, Meng Xingzi couldn't help saying. Lin Sun said, You don't seem to want me to help? Meng Xingzi shook his head quickly. I'm just worried that Brother Lin is new here and doesn't know the situation. If there is any danger, it will be disadvantageous to Brother Lin. Lin Sun glanced at him, ignored him, and rushed straight into the whirlpool passage. The heavens and the earth were dark and gloomy, and unlike the first three levels, the sky of the fourth level was covered in terrifying blood-colored lightning that surged like thunderclouds. Dazzling bolts of lightning would pour down from the sky from time to time, and they were suffused with a terrifying aura of destruction. As soon as he arrived, Lin Sun noticed that the thunder and lightning in the sky were transformed by a brutal and fierce evil spirit. This was amazing. The surroundings were boundless. The sky was muddy, and a violent aura that oppressed one's heart raged. Merely standing here was like standing in a bloody and cruel purgatory. A scarlet-red river of blood flowed mightily in the distance. The river water was dark red and muddy, and the roiling waves revealed numerous scenes of death. The sound of ghosts wailing and gods howling faintly resounded in the world, and it caused one to shudder with fear. Phew, after arriving here, Lin Sun had to run his cultivation to offset the oppressive evil chi from all directions. He asked, Where's the vile soul overlord you mentioned? Brother Lin, this place is really too dangerous. Do you know that more than half of the experts that came here in the last 10,000 years have suffered misfortune? Meng Xingzi's expression was filled with anxiety. An ordinary ferocious spirit is enough to kill a third-layer quasi-emperor, and the overlord of the ferocious spirit is almost comparable to a true martial emperor. As he spoke, he begged, Brother Lin, we'd better leave quickly. Otherwise, once we are discovered by the overlord of the ferocious spirit, there is absolutely no chance for us to escape alive. Lin Sun said expressionlessly, Didn't you say you want to save your companions? Why do you suddenly regret it now? Or is there something else that you are hiding from me? Meng Xingzi's expression changed, and he shook his head repeatedly. How dare I? I just... Boom! Suddenly, a blood-red thunderbolt fell from the distant sky, and then turned into a figure covered with dazzling blood-red lightning. It was a ferocious spirit, and its aura was boundlessly ferocious. Die! The ferocious spirit let out a sharp roar, and his figure turned into a blood-red waterfall, shuttling through the void and whistling over. Boom! He raised his hand and waved, and boundless blood rushed over like a tide. The blood was thick, and it exuded a disgusting, rancid, and evil aura. Just this blow alone was no weaker than a peak third-layer quasi-emperor. Crash! Lin Sun stood still, but there was a bright and blazing sword chi around his body, and it turned into a dense sword formation that crushed and annihilated the rolling blood torrent. An earth-shattering sound of collision resounded, and the sword formation operated. Unparalleled sword chi shot out, and the surging blood torrent was completely minced and annihilated. Before the ferocious spirit could get close, its body was cut into pieces, and it fell to the ground. Ding! A pebble-like source crystal of the Great Way fell, and it was bright, translucent, and flawless. Lin Sun caught it in his hand, and he couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise when he looked at it for a moment. This source crystal of the Great Way was of extraordinary quality, and the essence of the Great Way it contained was like a mist, and it was magnificent and colorful. It was far from comparable to the source crystals of the Great Way he had collected before. At this time, Meng Xingzi was already in a daze. He had come to the fourth layer for a trial, and he had to fight with all his strength to deal with the ferocious spirit just now. But under Lin Sun's attack, it was still vulnerable, and this almost subverted his understanding. After all, his cultivation was at the third level of the quasi-emperor realm, but it was completely insufficient when compared to Lin Sun. Right at this moment, Lin Sun spoke once more. I'll ask you one more time. Where is the overlord of the ferocious spirits? Meng Xingzi's entire body trembled, and he pointed into the distance. Fly in that direction for around the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, and you'll see a blood-red mountain. The overlord of the ferocious spirits resides at the peak of that blood-red mountain. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lin Sun led Meng Xingzi into action. The heavens and the earth were boundless, and lightning surged in the sky, and it was suffused with an aura of destruction. All along the way, Lin Sun still didn't conceal his aura, and he flew like a bolt of lightning, and he flickered ceaselessly in the sky like a wisp of flowing light. Occasionally, groups of ferocious spirits would appear, and all of them had surging vital energy and terrifying auras, and they seemed like evil spirits that had charged out from hell. Some had transformed into enormous beasts, and some had transformed into evil spirits. Compared to true cultivators, the only difference was that they didn't have intelligence. However, their battle strength was extremely ferocious. It was no exaggeration to say that if a figure like Meng Xingzi, who was one of the 7 great peaks of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, wanted to train here, he would have to risk his life. Unfortunately, Lin Sun wasn't an ordinary Zhu Hui quasi-emperor. Along the way, no matter what ferocious spirits appeared, no matter how ferocious and terrifying they looked, they were all crushed by Lin Sun's advancing footsteps. It was unstoppable. On the other hand, Lin Sun's gains were numerous great Dao source crystals of extraordinary quality. If he wasn't in a hurry, he really wanted to stay and thoroughly sweep through the 4th level of the Hell of Darkness to see how many Great Way source crystals he could obtain in the end. Brother Lin, that's where the overlord of the ferocious spirits resides. Because Lin Sun's attacking speed was too fast, Meng Xingzi saw that blood-red mountain in the distance in less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn. It stood between heaven and earth, majestic, and its entire body was blood-red, as if there were countless blood-red rivers flowing down from the peak of the mountain. Lin Sun couldn't help but frown as he looked from afar. The blood-red mountain was actually piled up by countless bones, and it gave off an extremely horrifying bloody aura of death. At the top of the mountain, an altar was built, and it was madly absorbing the power of the blood-red thunder from the sky. It seems that the intelligent overlord of the ferocious spirits is not simple. While Lin Sun was thinking, a feminine voice leisurely resounded between heaven and earth. It's a pleasure to have a friend come from afar. I wonder what advice you have for visiting my humble abode. The voice alone made Meng Xingzi tremble all over, and his face turned pale. At the same time, Lin Sun saw that on the top of the blood-red mountain, a figure emerged out of thin air. He was wearing a green robe, and he had a handsome face and a smile on his lips. Standing on the top of the mountain with a scroll in his hand, he was like a scholar full of knowledge, completely different from what Lin Sun had imagined. No one would believe that this young man in green robe was the overlord of the fourth level of the Purgatory of Darkness, a dominating existence in this world, if he didn't see it with his own eyes. But as Lin Sun ran, the clairvoyant eye, he immediately found that the scholarly young man was actually a skeleton. The skeleton was snow-white and translucent, as if it was made of divine iron, giving people a feeling of indestructibility. Between the eyebrows of the skeleton, there was an extremely powerful soul, like a coiled blood python, with its fangs exposed, strange and ferocious. Well, I didn't expect that you still have the courage to come here, you selfish guy. The man in green robe saw Meng Xingzi, and his eyes showed undisguised contempt. Shut up, Meng Xingzi shouted with a ferocious look. Evil creature, you still don't know that you are about to die. This time I come here to kill you. The man in green robe smiled and said, It turns out that you, a heartless guy, have found a helper. No wonder you dare to come back. As he said, he looked at Lin Sun with a thoughtful look and said, My fellow practitioner, I can feel that you are very powerful, far more powerful than ordinary people. If I say that I don't want to be your enemy, can you show mercy? His voice was clear and calm. It was not like the momentum of a fierce soul. Are you afraid? Do you want to live? Impossible. Meng Xingzi shouted with undisguised killing intent. Brother Lin, it is he who killed our fellow disciples of Bronze Sparrow Tower. Lin Sun's eyes flickered. Didn't you say those people were suppressed? As long as you hand over that treasure, you can save their lives? Meng Xingzi's face suddenly became unnatural, and he said, Brother Lin, how can you believe the words of that fierce soul? He must have already killed them. The green-clothed man looked up to the sky and laughed. So that's how it is. I finally understand. So you're making a false accusation and pushing all the blame onto me. You're quite insidious. Brother Lin, do it. Meng Xingzi shouted anxiously, as if he was afraid that the man in green robe would say more. But Lin Sun was indifferent. His dark eyes were deep, and he said expressionlessly, Meng Xingzi, at this time, I only have one question. What on earth are you hiding? His voice was piercingly cold. P.S. The analysis of the Master of Hearts combat power has been posted on the WeChat public account of Goldfish. Goldfish will continue to publish an article about Xia Zhi's appearance tomorrow. Chapter 2207. The man in cyan laughed first. It seems that you are not a fool. Meng Xingzi's face darkened. He glared at the man in cyan and then said to Lin Sun, Brother Lin, the fierce soul is as cunning as a ghost. He is deliberately provoking. Lin Sun interrupted. Last chance. There was a frightening chill in his voice. Meng Xingzi's forehead was covered with cold sweat. He looked flustered and said, Brother Lin, what are you suspecting? Don't be fooled by that evil creature. The man in cyan on the top of the mountain in the distance said, Let me tell you. A month ago, this person came here with a group of companions. They happened to see a primordial treasure, so they fought for it together. Unfortunately, I was also there at that time, and I found the treasure earlier than them. Meng Xingzi looked livid and shouted, Shut up, Brother Lin. Don't listen to his nonsense. Don't panic. It's okay to listen to his nonsense. Lin Sun raised his hand and patted Meng Xingzi's shoulder. The latter was immediately imprisoned and couldn't speak. He was so anxious that he was in a cold sweat. The azure-robed man smiled and continued, "Fellow Taoist, you should know that I am formed from a vicious soul. In your eyes, I am an anomaly that everyone should kill. However, I have awakened my intelligence after all, and I have my own nature and pride. When I fought for the treasure, I defeated Meng Xingzi's companions one by one, but I didn't kill them. I only asked Meng Xingzi to hand over the treasure in exchange for the lives of his companions. But who would have thought, ho-ho?" The man in cyan showed a touch of sarcasm. "Who would have thought that Meng Xingzi ran away with the treasure alone?" At this moment, Meng Xingzi, who was imprisoned there, was extremely shocked and angry. He struggled repeatedly as if he wanted to explain something, but it didn't help at all. "Ran away?" Lin Sun frowned and looked at Meng Xingzi. "He took back the imprisonment power. Is it true?" Meng Xingzi gasped and said anxiously, "It's fake. It's all fake. How can I abandon my companions for a treasure? This evil creature is obviously slandering and sowing discord." "Slandering? Then look who these people are." The green-robed man smiled and waved his hand. A group of figures floated up into appearance. There were men and women amongst them, and all of them were dispirited and on the verge of death. When they saw Meng Xingzi, all of them revealed expressions of rage and hatred, and some even started cursing loudly. "Meng Xingzi, we've known each other for hundreds of years, and I've taken you as a brother. Yet you've abandoned all of us for the sake of a treasure. You are truly ruthless. I listened to your orders and risked my life to help you seize the treasure. But what about you? After obtaining the treasure, you ran away by yourself." All of them seemed to be extremely excited, and they seemed as if they wished for nothing more than to skin Meng Xingzi alive. When he looked at Meng Xingzi again, his face was ghastly pale a long time ago. His entire body was shivering, and he had a panicked expression as he cried out loudly with a hoarse voice, "How are you still alive? No, all of you must have been controlled by that evil creature. When we were fighting for the treasure, I clearly saw all of you suffer." He looked at Lin Sun and pleaded, "Brother Lin, don't be deceived by that evil creature. I did lie before. After getting the treasure and leaving the 4th floor, I didn't intend to come back at all, because I knew that my companions had died. The reason why I deceived you was that I wanted to get the treasure back from you. But I dare to swear to God that I never abandoned my companions and ran away with the treasure alone when fighting for the treasure. Absolutely not. Like a drowning man, he used all his strength to defend himself." In the distance, the green-robed man sighed and said, "All the evidence is in front of you, but you're still stubborn. It's really pathetic." He looked at Lin Sun and said, "Do you believe me now, Taoism peer? Brother Lin?" Meng Xingzi collapsed to the ground and screamed anxiously, as if he couldn't explain himself. "I don't believe you." Lin Sun finally opened his mouth. He looked at the green-robed man on the top of the mountain in the distance with his black eyes like lightning. Just 3 words stunned the green-robed man. "You don't believe me?" The green-robed man frowned and said, "Aren't these enough to prove it?" Lin Sun said indifferently, "Let me ask you, the treasure has been taken away. Why do you keep Meng Xingzi's companions alive? Don't tell me that you've expected today's thing to happen, so you've prepared these witnesses in advance." Yes, that's right," Meng Xingzi shouted excitedly, as if he had come back to his senses. The green-robed man sighed softly. "My fellow practitioner, I've already said that I have spiritual wisdom, and I have my own nature and pride. When I fought for the treasure, I didn't kill them at all. Even if the treasure was taken away, how could I vent my anger on these people?" "Bullshit." Meng Xingzi gritted his teeth and roared, "You're an evil creature transformed by a ferocious soul. How can you have a merciful heart? Ridiculous. Why do ferocious souls have to do evil?" The green-robed man asked back. He was like a well-read Confucian scholar, showing his displeasure. "Remember, I have spiritual wisdom, and I'm different from those bastards without spiritual wisdom. What's more, if you don't believe me, you should believe these people, right?" The green-robed man pointed to the men and women around him. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep, and he said something inexplicable. "They are not themselves anymore. and their words are doomed to be untrustworthy. Meng Xingzi was confused and didn't understand. But the green-robed man seemed to understand. He couldn't help but be stunned, and a strange luster appeared in his eyes. You have already seen through it? He seemed to know Lin Sun again, and he seemed to be very surprised and surprised. Lin Sun sighed softly. If you didn't summon these people, maybe I would have believed you. But you overreached yourself. Under his heaven's eye, he'd clearly noticed that Meng Xingzi's companions seemed to be no different than an ordinary person. Yet their soul cores have been sealed by countless dense and strange blood-color talismans a long time ago. In short, these people were no different from puppets without souls. When they spoke before, they were also controlled by the green-robed man. In fact, it was because he saw through this that Lin Sun suddenly realized it. He was also shocked because, as he said, he almost believed the green-robed man's words just now. Brother Lin, you finally believe me. Meng Xingzi almost cried out. He was so depressed and panicked just now that he almost went crazy. It was no exaggeration to say that he just suspected that he would die with grievances. If you hadn't lied several times before, how could such a thing have happened? Lin Sun glanced at him, and he really couldn't feel any pity for him. It was because Meng Xingzi had lied that he was almost fooled by the green-robed man. Meng Xingzi looked embarrassed, ashamed, and self-reproached. He didn't dare to look at Lin Sun's eyes. In the final analysis, he cared too much about that treasure. It seems that I underestimated you. The smile on the green-robed man's lips disappeared. He stared at Lin Sun with a strange light in his eyes. Then tell me, why did I spend so much effort to deceive you just to wrongly accuse Meng Xingzi? He doesn't deserve it. His voice was full of disdain. Lin Sun said indifferently, because you don't have the confidence to kill me, so you can only take it slowly. If I am really fooled, you will take further action. What action? The green-robed man raised his eyebrows. Lin Sun said, for example, leading me into the mountain where you are, and using the power of the forbidden formation covering the mountain to deal with me. The green-robed man was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, he clapped his hands and praised. Great! You are really insightful. It's hard for me not to admire you. After a pause, he said with a smile, however, you guessed wrong. The reason why I deceived you is not that I don't have the confidence to kill you. I just want to have some fun. His eyes were suffused with sadness. I awakened my intelligence a long time ago, but I've been trapped in this damned place that you call the purgatory of darkness for countless years. I want to leave as well, but it just so happens that no matter what I do, I'm unable to struggle free from the energy of this place. After a long time, I will feel very bored, lonely, and tormented. The green-robed man sighed. Lin Sun looked indifferent, without any fluctuation in his mood. The green-robed man seemed to be a scholar full of knowledge, with an open and magnanimous manner. But in fact, he had a glib tongue and was as cunning as a ghost. It was difficult to distinguish whether what he said was true or false. Lin Sun didn't want to distinguish it at all. He turned over his palm, and the broken half of the spear appeared. He said directly, with your wisdom, it should not be difficult to guess that I am here for this treasure. The green-robed man was stunned. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun was not interested in what he said at all. After a while, he nodded and said, yes, anyone who gets such a half of the treasure will definitely want to know where the other half of the treasure is. It's easy to guess. Do you know where the other half is? Lin Sun asked directly. The green-robed man couldn't help laughing. Why should I tell you? Why? Lin Sun also laughed. He stepped forward with his clothes fluttering in the wind. An incomparably terrible power spread out, making him seem to become another person in an instant, looking down at the green-robed man like a god. The green-robed man narrowed his eyes slightly and then sighed. It's really boring. The disputes since ancient times inevitably have to be solved by fighting in the end. With a sigh, he waved his sleeves. Boom! The blood-red thunderbolts covering the sky suddenly rolled fiercely, and blood-red figures rushed out of the thunderbolts, like fiends rushing out of hell. Countless evil spirits had appeared, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Taoism appeared if you can survive this tribulation, I will tell you where the other half of the heavenless spear is. Chapter 22:08. Boom. The world was in chaos and thunder surged. Hundreds of bloody, evil souls rushed out like a tide. Each of them had the power of a quasi-emperor, and the strongest one was even comparable to the third level of a quasi-emperor. Seeing this scene, Meng Xingzi was so scared that his face turned green and his hair stood on end. He had never thought that in the blink of an eye, a killing tribulation had come. Now, do you understand that I'm not afraid, but very bored? The laughter of the man in cyan echoed between heaven and earth. To be honest, I'm also very bored. Let's take this opportunity to play. Lin Sun also laughed. As he spoke, his sleeves fluttered and his palms formed an incantation. Up! He stood on the stellar dough and pointed to the northeast. With a deafening roar, countless dense Taoist symbols emerged in the northeast area, colorful and blazing, like a gorgeous rainbow rising to the sky. Kill! A group of bloody, evil souls rushed over, ferocious and terrifying. Lin Sun didn't fight with them. His figure flashed and disappeared in place, appearing in another direction. Up! He formed an incantation with his hands and stepped on the ground. With a bang, tide-like Taoist patterns emerged, circling and dancing, shining brilliantly. On the top of the bloody mountain in the distance, the man in cyan gradually frowned. He couldn't understand what Lin Sun was doing. He neither attacked nor dodged. Instead, he seemed to be setting up a formation. But the point was that how could the forbidden formation of Taoist patterns in the world be set up casually? In addition to formation flags, formation plates, formation bases, formation stones, he also needed a source of power to maintain the operation of the formation. The man in cyan really couldn't understand what was the difference between setting up a formation at this time and seeking death. Although he couldn't understand the mystery, he still decided to attack and destroy it. He conveyed a horrible and strange thought, which swept the whole area like a storm. Attack with all your strength and interrupt all his actions. The bloody evil souls, like a tide, all rushed towards Lin Sun like crazy, as if they had received the decree of God. Rumble. The world was in chaos, and it was filled with countless bloody figures. The destructive force swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and it almost drowned Lin Sun's figure. This scene was too terrifying. Just think about it. If hundreds and thousands of quasi-emperors were to attack at the same time, how terrifying would that lineup and power be? And all these attacks were directed at Lin Sun. Meng Xingzi had already fled far away before the battle broke out. He didn't dare to hesitate at all. Originally, he thought that Lin Sun would choose to retreat like him. But who would have thought that Lin Sun had no intention of dodging at all? When Meng Xingzi looked at the field, Lin Sun's figure had already been submerged. The world was shaking, and the bloody light was rolling. It was impossible to see clearly. This made Meng Xingzi's heart turn cold, and there was only one thought left in his mind. Leave or stay? The indistinct, ferocious souls were like raging waves as they charged forward, and they covered the heavens and the earth, while peerless, chaotic flows of energy swept out and crushed space into pieces. The power of the restriction array that covered the entire blood-color mountain was activated, and it was barely able to neutralize the destructive power. The man in cyan, standing on the top of the mountain, was a little relieved. With his hands behind his back, his pupils flashing a strange luster, he stared at the battlefield in the distance. His cyan robe fluttered in the wind, like a ruler overlooking his own territory. He's not dead yet. This guy is far more powerful than I expected, he murmured softly. He saw that Lin Sun was still struggling. Even if he was besieged, there was no sign of him dying for a while. But he didn't panic. Rise! 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 Lin Sun's figure flickered, like a flickering light among countless bloody shadows, drifting erratically. Although he was besieged and almost impenetrable as he operated his cultivation, he could easily crush the opponent's resistance. There were indeed too many enemies, densely packed and seemingly endless. But when it came to combat strength, none of them could enter Lin Sun's eyes. In addition, these ferocious souls were only fighting by instinct, without intelligence and consciousness. This alone made them incomparable to the real quasi-emperors. Rise. After pinching out the last incantation, Lin Sun's figure flashed, broke through the siege, and came under the sky. He took a deep breath, and his black eyes couldn't help showing a hint of expectation. Then he waved his sleeve tut. A thunderous and obscure tune of the Tao resounded through the surroundings. This is the man in cyan on the top of the bloody mountain in the distance frowned, looking at Lin Sun standing proudly under the sky, and suddenly had a bad premonition. The next moment, he was stunned, and his pupils dilated sharply. Numerous swaying and graceful azure-colored lotus flowers suddenly surged into appearance on the battlefield. There were over 1,000 of them, and they covered the heavens and the earth, causing the world to be tainted in a layer of jade green. It was just like the infinite cyan lotus leaves. If one looked carefully, every single azure-colored lotus was large like a millstone, and they swayed in the sky. Every single lotus leaf was formed from countless dense markings of the Tao, and they flowed with a myriad of misty and gorgeous rain of light. And the blooming lotus between the lotus leaves, each had 36 petals, and the stamens were as brilliant as cyan jade. Vaguely, there seemed to be a phantom of a god sitting in it, chanting sutras and resounding through the sky. In a flash, the bloody and gloomy chaotic battlefield seemed to have turned into a sacred world of gods, a country of peace and tranquility, sitting on a big lotus. The man in cyan was stunned, his mind trembling, and an uncontrollable chill surged in his heart. Just looking at it from a distance, he already felt a fatal danger. The formation transforms into the will of the gods, and the Tao has no power. Lin Sun's indifferent voice resounded, like the sonorous voice of the Great Way. Then, among the thousands of green lotuses, the phantoms of gods emerged. An unparalleled divine brilliance shot out. The world seemed to be burning. Everything turned into ashes, and the void was incinerated. There were also endless roars of Taoist sounds, sweeping across the sky and earth. The blood-red, ferocious souls that surged out like tidewater were like paper, and their figures transformed into ash and vanished amidst the boundless light and sound of the Tao. In an instant, the heavens and the earth seemed to have been cleansed, and not a single ferocious soul remained. All of them seemed as if they'd been wiped out and vanished in a thin air. Only the green lotuses were like a world. The gods were like illusions, and peerless divine green radiance flowed and illuminated the world. Bang! The layer upon layer of Tao markings and restrictions that covered the blood-red mountain in the distance rumbled and collapsed like an avalanche, and the entire mountain shook violently before collapsing with a rumble. The azure-clothed man that stood on the peak of the mountain was affected as well, and his figure seemed as if it was swept by a gale as he was blasted flying fiercely, and he was in an extremely sorry state. What a formidable grand formation! What a formidable ability! He coughed up blood repeatedly, and his handsome face was covered in shock and astonishment. Those countless ferocious souls were his subordinates, and every single one of them possessed the might of a peak quasi-emperor. However, they were completely annihilated before such a grand formation. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. This caused the azure-clothed man's mind to suffer an unprecedented blow, and he trembled because of it. All his confidence and pride seemed to have collapsed at this moment. Under the sky, Lin Sun's heart was also filled with unspeakable shock. This formation was called Lifeless Killing Formation, ranked 9th in all heavens, and was created by Master Lu. It had once shown brilliantly in the Taoism War of ancient emperors, killing 5 emperors and seriously injuring 8 emperors. It was with this formation that Master Lu, who was only at the quasi-emperor realm, gained the reputation of Formation Emperor Lu. However, what Lin Sun had set up now was just a crude, lifeless killing formation, and its changes in power were also limited. it was far from being comparable with a real lifeless killing formation. Even so, when the formation was in operation, it still killed and cleansed all the ferocious souls in the field. If I can set up a complete, lifeless killing formation, how powerful will it be? Lin Sun couldn't help but look forward to it. Qingying gave him the jade slip left by Master Lu, which was full of Taoist classics related to spiritual tattoos written by Master Lu. It not only recorded the lifeless killing formation, but also many other mysteries related to spiritual tattoos. It could be said to be as vast as the sea. With his current attainments in spiritual tattoos, Lin Sun could not help but be deeply inspired and often felt enlightened. For example, the lifeless killing formation displayed before was some of the mysteries that Lin Sun had comprehended in just a few days. Although he only grasped a little bit of it, its power could not be underestimated. Clatter, soon, the green lotuses all over the sky turned into light rain and disappeared. Lin Sun looked at the man in green in the distance and said, "Do you still feel bored now?" The man in green took a deep breath, wiped off the blood stains on the corners of his mouth, and sighed. "Your means are superb. It can be said that you can summon clouds and rain with a turn of your hand. How dare I make trouble again?" Saying this, he still asked with some unwillingness, "I'm very curious whether you can break out of the encirclement without the power of the formation just now." Lin Sun said indifferently, "As I said before, I just want to try the power of the formation out of boredom. If I really take action, you will be the first to suffer." The man in green was stunned and couldn't help but sneer. "In your eyes, am I so unbearable?" Swoosh! Lin Sun took a step forward and came in front of the man in green, casually pressing out with his palm. A cold light flashed in the man's eyes. He had been waiting for this opportunity. However, when he really faced Lin Sun's palm, he suddenly found that he was like in a cage, sealed and shrouded in all directions. There was nowhere to escape and nowhere to hide. He could only face it head-on. Almost out of a kind of fighting instinct, the man in green exhausted all his strength and released it to the extreme. He did not believe that in a head-on confrontation, a character in the third stage of the Quasi-Emperor would be his opponent. Boom! The blood and chi around his body rumbled like 100,000 volcanoes erupting. Incomparably violent laws gushed out, all gathered into a palm print and blasted out. This was the first time since he self-consciously awakened his spiritual consciousness that he had gone all out. Just a single palm print gathered all his life's cultivation. The void was chaotic, divine splendor splashed, and accompanied by a burst of explosion, the man in green's palm print exploded with a loud bang, seeming so vulnerable. And his whole body was directly slapped away, smashing hard on the ground hundreds of feet away, splashing smoke and dust all over the sky. P.S. Big guy, don't rush me. The day after tomorrow, the goldfish will break out 5 times. Chapter 2209. The green-robed man coughed up blood, and his skin cracked like porcelain. He raised his head with difficulty and looked at Lin Sun in the distance in disbelief. The power of one palm was enough to heavily injure him, who had gone all out. "Now, are you convinced?" Lin Sun looked at him calmly. The green-robed man gasped for breath for a moment. Finally, he sighed and lowered his head. "Even if I don't want to accept it, I can't. Where is the other half of the Great Way Empyrean spear?" Lin Sun asked. The azure-clothed man was silent for a moment before he said, "I'll die after I tell you, right?" Lin Sun didn't deny it. "At least you can die more quickly." The corners of the azure-robed man's lips twitched as he said, "Actually, I've already guessed that this day would come, but I've been hiding a trace of hope in my heart. Forget it. There's no harm in telling you. If my memories before I awaken my intelligence are correct, the other half of the great Tao Empyrean spear should be in the hands of the 7th floor Silverbat Ghost Emperor." With that, he lay down on the ground, closed his eyes, and said, "Give me a quick death." He suddenly remembered something from a long time ago. At that time, he had just awakened his spiritual wisdom. He had transformed from a cruel and ruthless evil spirit into a spirit that could think, recognize the world, and cultivate on his own. At that time, he felt incomparably frustrated. Even though he possessed intelligence, he was born with original sin. What flowed through his body was a mixture of remnant thoughts, resentment, and filthy blood energy. However, he was not willing to become an intelligent evil spirit, just like what he said to Meng Xingzi before. Did he have to do evil just because he was born as an evil spirit? He had been thinking about this problem for countless years. This was the gloom purgatory, and it was like a cage that he was unable to escape from. He could only accompany those ferocious spirits here, and he wanted to distinguish between good and evil, black and white, right and wrong. It was almost impossible, but now he was about to die. The azure-robed man suddenly felt a sense of relief. Good and evil, black and white, right and wrong, all of these were no longer important. He only felt lucky. At least, he had truly lived. They were not like those evil spirits who did not know why they were born, nor did they know why they died. They were muddle-headed and did not know who they were. After waiting for a long time, the green-robed man suddenly froze. Why wasn't he dead yet? He couldn't help but open his eyes. The world was boundless and the scenery was still the same. He raised his head with difficulty and looked around, only to find that the young man's figure had long since disappeared. Only a jade slip was quietly placed beside him. He was silent for a moment before he picked up the jade slip. Recorded within it was an inherited Tao scripture called the Great Scripture of Solitude. The azure-clothed man felt as if his heart had been struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot, and his body started to slightly tremble from an indescribable surge of emotions. After a long while, the green-robed man got up and respectfully knelt on the ground, kowtowing 3 times and 9 times toward the distance. From that day on, the purgatory of darkness lost a vicious soul overlord and gained a scholar who spent his days meditating on the Zen. His green robes were upright and his mind was clear. Countless years later, he chanted a supreme scripture and purified all the evil spirits in the purgatory of darkness. He shook the heavens, and the people of the world called him the Confucian Buddhist emperor. A drink and a peck, all predetermined. A long time ago, the 1,000-feather-flower sword, which had just gained sentience, was saved by Shuya, the successor of Mount Fangsuan, on a stormy night. Shuya gave the snow-listening bamboo sword. Later, the 1,000-feather-flower sword stood up for Lin Sun in the Great Wall of Imperial Pass to repay his kindness. A long time ago, a little fisherman who grew up by the sea was favored by Li Xianwei, the successor of Mount Fangsuan. The little fisherman later became the founder of Xuanji Taoist sect, Boyazi. A long time ago, to cultivators, a good karma that they inadvertently planted might grow into a towering tree in the years to come. Karma was wonderful beyond words. Brother Lin, I've let you down in the past. I've told some lies and done some stupid things. Meng Xingzi's face was full of shame. When Lin Sun was fighting before, he didn't escape and was even ready to support Lin Sun. But what he didn't expect was that Lin Sun alone swept away all the evil spirits and easily suppressed the vicious soul overlord. Hurry up, the 4th floor is too dangerous. Lin Sun waved his hand. Brother Lin, Meng Xingzi still wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Lin Sun. I have no prejudice against you, so you don't have to blame yourself too much. I hope you won't repeat the same mistakes in the future. After that, Lin Sun floated away. For him, it was not a big deal whether he spared the life of the man in Cyan or let go of Meng Xingzi who had deceived him. It was nothing more than a coincidence and taking advantage of the situation. What Lin Sun really cared about was where the other half of the Great Law Empyrean Spear was. Meng Xingzi stood alone for a long time, and finally sighed, turned around, and left. He knew that the root of this disaster was nothing more than one word: greed. If he didn't want to control the Great Law Empyrean Spear, he would never have lied to Lin Sun. It was no exaggeration to say that Lin Sun had only himself to blame for killing him at that time. The 5th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. Lin Sun walked alone in surprise. The rolling evil spirit rushed at his face, producing an oppressive force that was enough to make ordinary quasi-emperors unable to move. But these oppressive forces were easily resolved before they could approach Lin's son. Chi, a figure in a tattered Taoist robe with green pupils, wielded a rusty, broken halberd and charged at him. When the halberd was waved, a scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood appeared. This was a fierce spirit that was almost as strong as the man in cyan. It was so strong that even a third-step quasi-emperor would find it extremely difficult to resist it. But as Lin Sun struck out with his palm, the figure in tattered Taoist robe exploded and fell into pieces. With a clang, a dazzling Great Way Source crystal fell into Lin Sun's hand. Upon closer inspection, this Great Way Source crystal contained an almost imperceptible fragment of the laws of Emperor Realm. It seems that Buchuan was right. The lower I go, the better the quality of the Great Way Source crystal. Lin Sun put away this Great Way Source crystal and continued forward. The fifth floor was undoubtedly even more dangerous. The weakest of the ferocious spirits was comparable to a third-grade quasi-emperor. Some of the ferocious spirits even carried a faint martial emperor aura, which was extremely frightening. Unfortunately, they were not true Emperor Realm experts and were destined to be no match for Lin Sun. 30 minutes later, Lin Sun traveled 30,000 kilometers and killed 59 fierce spirits along the way. He collected 43 Great Way Source crystals, 6 of which contained fragments of the laws of Emperor Realm. In addition, after killing these fierce spirits, Lin Sun also collected many broken treasures, all of which were controlled by the fierce spirits and were all primordial Emperor Realm treasures. Unfortunately, all of them lacked spirituality and were far from being comparable to real Emperor Realm weapons. Lin Sun threw them to Wu Kei and the Spirit of the Broken Blade as food. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that there was a fierce battle taking place in a place far away. It was an extremely tall, black-robed woman with an extremely fierce aura. She held a pair of fiery red scimitars in her hands, and when she moved, she was like a swift red lightning. Her opponent was a fierce spirit clad in broken bronze armor. Its body was more than 10 feet tall, and blood chi surged all over its body, evolving into countless blood-colored dowlights. This fierce spirit was extraordinarily powerful and clearly possessed spiritual intelligence. When it fought, it was no different from a true third-stage quasi-emperor expert. However, the black-robed woman was even more ferocious. In the blink of an eye, she brandished her scimitars, and the fierce spirit screamed in pain. Before long, it was defeated, and its body was chopped into countless blood-colored fragments. At the same time, a colorful Great Way Source crystal fell. Clang! The black-robed woman whistled and neatly put away her scimitars and the Great Way Source crystal. After a brief examination, a satisfied smile appeared on her wild and beautiful face. However, she suddenly turned her head and looked into the distance. After so many years, someone has finally come to the 5th level. As she spoke, she waved her hand. My name is Hualan. I entered the Purgatory of Darkness 357 years ago and only entered the 5th level 3 years ago. What about you, brother? She was valiant and heroic, and her whole body exuded a sharp and capable aura. Her hair was tied behind her head, and her beautiful, wheat-colored face was angular and beautiful. Lin Sun, I just came here 2 days ago. Lin Sun came from afar. After a brief examination, he found that this woman named Hualan had an extremely vigorous aura, far beyond that of ordinary people in the same realm. It made sense. How could a character who had been fighting in the dark purgatory for more than 300 years be ordinary? 2 days ago, Hualan was stunned. She looked Lin Sun up and down with a pair of phoenix eyes as bright as a blade and asked suspiciously, Really? It doesn't matter whether I believe it or not. I'll leave first. As Lin Sun said, he rushed forward. The 5th level was still not suitable for him to practice. Wait a minute, Hualan shouted. Further ahead, there is a fierce spirit transformed from a primitive giant crocodile. It has long possessed wisdom and is extremely fierce. Hey, I'm talking to you. Thank you for reminding me. Lin Sun's voice came from afar without looking back. Hualan frowned. This arrogant, guy didn't even listen to her warning. Was he so eager to die? After thinking for a while, she gritted her teeth and chased after him. During these years, she had been fighting alone in this world. It was not easy for her to meet a living person. How could she watch him die? At the same time, Lin Sun also noticed that Huolan had caught up with him. He couldn't help being stunned, but he immediately stopped thinking about it and continued to move forward. Hey, wait for me. You are most likely to encounter an accident if you keep running around like this. Huolan's voice came from behind with a trace of anger. It seemed that she was blaming Lin Sun for not knowing what was good for him. Don't worry, Mississippi. I know what I'm doing. Lin Sun's voice sounded, and he still didn't mean to stop. This annoyed Huolan. Her starry eyes were burning with anger. Arrogant, too arrogant. She had reminded him again and again, but he didn't appreciate it. She couldn't wait for the fierce spirit transformed from the primitive giant crocodile to come out and teach this guy a painful lesson. As soon as this thought came to her mind, she heard an earth-shaking roar in the distance, which made the void tremble and sand and stones fly. Following that, an earth-shattering, baleful aura spread out from afar. Chapter 22:10. Lin Sun stopped. He noticed the horrible aura earlier than Huolan did. Boom, boom, boom. The world trembled and the void tumbled violently. In the far distance, a vicious soul as large as a mountain appeared. It looked like a giant crocodile, with 4 limbs like pillars supporting the sky, a head the size of a house, and scarlet scales covering its entire body. Fiendish chi surged like lava, flowing down from its body. Its eyes were as big as a millstone, scarlet and cold, exuding a cruel and ferocious aura. This evil spirit was transformed from a giant crocodile. When it walked, it was like a floating land. In front of it, people looked very small. Roar! It roared to the sky, and the sound waves were like rolling thunder sweeping across the world. The terrible evil spirit could make people collapse directly. Huolan, who had thought that the ferocious soul could kill Lin Sun's arrogance after it appeared, changed her expression and shouted, "Lin, what are you waiting for? Let's go." Her voice was full of fear and anxiety. She had been wandering in the 5th layer for many years and had fought with this giant crocodile several times. Every time, she could only flee, not daring to fight head-on. However, Lin Sun said calmly, "Don't panic, Mississippi. It's just a beast with spiritual intelligence. If it dares to block the way, I will kill it." Huolan almost couldn't believe her ears. This guy was not only arrogant, but also insufferably arrogant. She couldn't help but scold. "Do you really want to die? This evil spirit has the power of a half-emperor. Although it's not as strong as a real emperor, it's not something a quasi-emperor can compete with." As she said, she rushed forward to grab Lin Sun and take him away so that he wouldn't die. Lin Sun dodged her attack and said, "Miss, why don't you watch the battle?" In fact, he was quite touched in his heart. They just met by chance, but Huolan repeatedly reminded him. Even if he was looked down upon, he couldn't be angry at her. "Watch the battle. Watch you die." Huolan gnashed her teeth in anger. She had never seen such an insensible guy. "Don't quarrel. Isn't it better for you to die together?" In the distance, the giant crocodile's rumbling voice was full of playfulness and cruelty. Boom! A bloody chain as thick as a python swept out from the body of the ancient giant crocodile and swept towards Lin at an incredible speed. The space around them was thrown into disorder. The blood-colored chains were formed from the laws of the Grand Tao, and they contained a strange and unfathomable fiendish aura that was extremely formidable. Clang! Clang! Huolan's expression changed abruptly, and she unsheathed her 2 scarlet scimitars without hesitation to block this attack. But Lin Sun had already rushed out with his bare hands. He grabbed the blood-colored chain and shook it gently. The blood-colored chain, imprinted with the aura of an Emperor Realm expert, exploded like a dead snake. Lin Sun, on the other hand, had already rushed forward. With a clang, the bright, invincible saber appeared in his hand, and he slashed out. Whoosh! A snow-white saber aura suddenly appeared, illuminating the entire world in a vast expanse of white. The peerlessly swift and fierce saber chi disregarded all obstructions, and it had a domineering aura that struck directly at the heart. It seemed to be able to destroy the shackles of the ages and cut through all restraints. Huolan only felt a stinging pain in front of her eyes, and then she heard a muffled sound, followed by the earth-shattering roar of the ancient giant crocodile. When she opened her eyes again, she saw the sky was dyed with blood. A bloody wound was left on the mountain-like giant crocodile's body, and it was screaming. Lin Sun's tall figure was like a ray of courageous light, holding a saber in his hand, rushing up to the crocodile. Compared with the giant crocodile, his figure was obviously very small, but Huolan felt a kind of domineering and invincible demeanor, a kind of demonic momentum that made her heart tremble. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The snow-white saber aura swept across, dancing wildly between heaven and earth, tearing the sky, and completely suppressing the ancient giant crocodile. No matter how it fought back and resisted, it was in vain. Pieces of flesh were cut off and fell down. Soon, the mountain-like giant crocodile was bleeding profusely, and it was as miserable as a bag of bones. Huolan was completely dumbfounded. Was this still the horrible evil spirit that made her run away in embarrassment many times? Why was it like an animal waiting to be slaughtered? Its flesh was constantly cut off, and its bones were exposed. Boom! With a bang, the huge skeleton of the ancient giant crocodile, which had been cut by the saber aura, let out a shrill and unwilling roar, and then fell to the ground with a loud crash. This also made Huolan sober up from the shock. For a moment, her beautiful face changed, and an uncontrollable trance surged in her heart. An evil spirit with the power of a junior emperor was cut to death in just a few blinks of an eye. It was as unreal as a dream. "Girl, do you believe me now?" A clear voice that carried a hint of laughter resounded by her ear. Huolan raised her head instinctively, and she saw the fellow that she'd thought was insufferably arrogant had suddenly appeared before her, and he was grinning at her. There was a hint of ridicule in his words. Huolan took a deep breath, suppressed the shock in her heart, and snorted, "Show off." She turned around and left. "Are you angry?" Lin Sun was stunned. Huolan waved her hand without looking back, and said impatiently, "You are so arrogant that I don't need to worry about you. Why should I stay? To be laughed at by you?" Lin Sun touched his nose and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect this valiant and wild woman to be so hot-tempered. "Hey!" Lin Sun shouted. "What else do you want?" Huolan still didn't look back. "Thank you for reminding me just now. Why come back from the 9th floor? I'll make it up to you." As soon as Lin Sun finished his words, Huolan felt dizzy, and then a bright source crystal of the size of an alms bowl fell into her hand. It was heavy and diffused with the pure breath of the Great Way. Huolan suddenly turned her head and said angrily, "I'm not that stingy. Why should I compensate you with this thing?" Lin Sun waved his hand with a smile. "We fought side by side, so you should have half of the spoils. This is my rule. You have to take it if you don't want it. See you." As he spoke, he smiled and turned to leave, as if he was afraid that Huolan would return the source crystal. "Humph!" Huolan glared at his back and then looked at the source crystal in her hand. She muttered, "It's such a good treasure. It would be a waste if I don't take it." Then she realized something and her eyes narrowed. What did that guy just say? He wanted to go to the 9th floor. Wasn't he courting death? "Hey!" Huolan opened her mouth to warn him, but she found that Lin Sun had disappeared in the vast world. Only her voice echoed between heaven and earth. Her beautiful face kept changing. After a while, she stamped her foot and said, "I'd like to see if you will come back to apologize to me. I'll be waiting." The 6th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. Lin Sun finally felt the long-lost, threatening, and oppressive aura. The world here was scarlet, broken, desolate, and shrouded in a thick and gloomy aura. As he walked, Lin Sun had to use his true strength to resist the omnipresent oppressive power. This led him to make a judgment. An ordinary 3rd stage quasi-emperor would be courting death by coming here. In other words, the 6th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness was a place where only martial emperors could come to train. This is only the 6th floor, but it's already so terrifying. Back then, second senior brother was able to fight his way to the ninth floor when he was only a peak quasi-emperor. Lin Sun finally understood how ferocious second senior brother Zhong Qiu was back then. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun began to move forward. Along the way, the oppressive power of heaven and earth was like a tidal wave, forcing Lin Sun to use his cultivation at all times to move forward. Interesting. This is the first time in countless years that I've seen a little quasi-emperor come here to die. Didn't his elders tell him that the sixth floor is not a place that an ant below the martial emperor realm can enter? Suddenly, an erratic and sneaky voice rang out. However, when one tried to identify it, they couldn't find the source of the voice. No, this is the second time. In ancient times, there was also a fellow at the quasi-emperor realm who came here. His combat strength was even more terrifying than an ordinary martial emperor. Oh, really? Then how do you think this little thing compares with that person? Haha, let's see if he can leave alive. Everyone, don't fight over this little prey. This little prey is mine. I like his youthful physique. Even his blood is filled with an alluring smell. Old thing, you're no longer a human being. The noisy voices were like the conversations of evil spirits in the ghost realm. They were whispering to each other, full of a horrifying smell. The sound drifted between heaven and earth, as if there were countless evil spirits hiding in the dark and would rush out at any time. Lin Sun looked calm and turned a deaf ear to them. His tall figure walked alone between heaven and earth, and the sword case on his back glowed with a dull light. Suddenly, a big pale hand broke out of the ground and grabbed at Lin Sun. Its sharp fingertips were surrounded by scarlet light. This sudden scene was enough to frighten everyone. But Lin Sun seemed to have expected it. Or at the moment when the big pale hand appeared, he didn't hesitate to take action. Swish! The lawless saber rolled up the bright saber chi, like a reverse Milky Way pouring down, and the unparalleled Taoist light illuminated the world. Puff! The big pale hand was cut down, and a huge ravine was cut out on the ground. The earth rolled and shook constantly. In the depths of the ravine, a muffled cry of pain rang out, full of surprise and anger. The sounds of whispers that resounded ceaselessly in the heavens, and the earth seemed to have been deterred at this moment, and a short period of silence appeared. The atmosphere suddenly became oppressive, but Lin Sun still seemed to be unaware of it. He glanced at the depths of the ravine and continued to move forward. His figure stood out from the crowd. His indifferent and composed attitude of disregard was like a silent provocation and contempt, and it caused all the ferocious beings that were hiding in the shadows to become restless. The horrible killing intent began to spread between heaven and earth, like the gloom after the coming of the everlasting night.